Subliminal messaging is a method used to send signals or cues to the brain without a person noticing them on a conscious level. These messages are often hidden in media like audio tracks, video clips, or advertising content. The goal is to influence thoughts or behavior without the audience knowing what's happening. The human brain processes information in two main ways: consciously and subconsciously. Conscious thought is the part of your mind you're aware of. It's where you decide what to wear, what to eat, and how to solve problems. The subconscious works quietly in the background. It stores emotions, patterns, habits, and memories. Subliminal messaging aims at this second part, the part you don't notice but that shapes your responses. Imagine watching a movie where every few seconds, a single frame flashes a word like obey or consume. The frame appears so fast, just a few milliseconds, that your eyes barely register it, but your subconscious might still absorb it. Over time, repeated exposure could shape how you feel or act without you realizing why. In the 1950s, a marketer named James Vickery claimed to have done an experiment in a movie theater. He said he flashed the phrases, "Drink Coca-Cola and eat popcorn" during a film, too fast for the audience to notice. According to him, sales for both snacks went up. While his study was later found to be false, the idea of subliminal influence caught on and stayed in public discussion. People began to fear hidden influence in music, television, and advertising. One of the clearest ways to see this method is in the use of backward masking in music. This is when audio is recorded backward and mixed into a song. Some believed that bands used this to hide dark messages in rock music during the 1970s and 1980s. While science didn't prove that people could be controlled this way, the fear of such messages was enough to lead to record burnings and public hearings. Another common form of subliminal messaging is audio that plays at a frequency just below the range of human hearing. These are sometimes called binaural beats or subaudible messages. The idea is that your ears may not hear the message, but your brain still picks it up. Some self-help audio tapes claim to use this method to boost confidence or quit smoking. The voice that says positive statements is mixed with calming sounds, such as ocean waves or rainfall, making the words nearly impossible to hear. But they are still there, buried in the sound, feeding messages to the subconscious. Advertising has also been accused of using hidden shapes, symbols, or words to guide your feelings. For example, a perfume ad might show a bottle next to a shape that looks like a naked body when you look closer. The shape is subtle, it is not the main focus of the ad, but your brain picks up on it. This type of message is not illegal, but it walks a fine line between persuasion and manipulation. In video, another method is called embedding. This is where a word or symbol is briefly shown in a scene or layered into the background. A soft whisper, a faint image, or a color that sparks emotion may be used. These elements don't attract your full attention, but your subconscious notes them and stores the impression. Over time, this can steer you to buy a product, trust a brand, or adopt a certain view. In political campaigns, this tactic can be powerful. A candidate's team might insert soft music or calm voice patterns that match feelings of safety or family. They may also flash short, vague threats connected to their opponents. You may not recall the ad fully, but you are left with a sense of fear or comfort. That sense can shape how you vote or how you talk about the candidate later. Subliminal messaging isn't magic. It doesn't turn people into robots. It works best when it plays on emotions, beliefs, or habits that are already in place. If someone already feels insecure, a message that whispers reassurance may land harder. If someone already fears loss, a quick flash of danger may stick more deeply. The message doesn't create the emotion. It taps into one that's already there. Retail stores sometimes use scent as a form of subliminal influence. A clothing store might pump a specific smell into the air to make you feel comfortable. You may not notice the smell consciously, but your brain links it with pleasant memories. The next time you walk past that store, the same smell may pull you in without you knowing why. In the digital age, algorithms might personalize content with subtle cues based on your behavior. A user who spends time reading articles about self-doubt might be shown ads with background music that suggests warmth and safety, paired with smiling faces. The words may sound casual, but the whole scene is shaped to target a specific mental state. The viewer never sees the planning behind the scene. They just feel that the ad makes sense or feels right. Critics argue that subliminal messaging violates informed consent. If someone changes their view or behavior without knowing they were influenced, was that decision truly their own? Others say that we are always under influence in one way or another, by friends, by culture, by habit. What makes subliminal influence more troubling is its hidden nature. You can't question or resist what you don't notice. Some researchers believe subliminal methods can help in therapy when used ethically. For example, positive affirmations might be embedded in sleep music to build self-esteem. In this case, the goal is support, not control, but the same tools can be used for both good and harm. That's why intent and context matter. While some studies suggest that subliminal cues can shape short-term responses, such as mood or quick choices, strong, long-term behavior changes usually need more than hidden tricks. Still, in combination with repetition, emotional charge and social proof, subliminal elements can tilt the balance, especially when people are tired, distracted, or overwhelmed. In everyday life, the best way to guard against unwanted influence is to slow down and stay aware. If you feel strongly drawn to something without knowing why, ask yourself what made that feeling come up. Was it the words, the music, the timing, or the mood? That moment of pause may be enough to break the spell. Predictive programming is the idea that fiction can prepare people for real events. It happens when stories in movies, TV shows, or books show events or situations before they happen in real life. The purpose is not just to entertain, it's to shape how people think, feel, and react when those events take place. The process works by putting shocking or unusual ideas into a fictional setting. When people first see these ideas, they might feel fear, confusion, or disbelief. But when they see the same ideas again and again in different stories, those feelings start to fade. Over time, the public may come to see those once shocking ideas as normal, expected, or even inevitable. Imagine a film that shows a major city under lockdown after a virus outbreak. People wear masks, follow strict curfews, and accept limits on their movement. At first, the movie feels dramatic and far-fetched. But if that same idea appears in 10 more shows, a few games, and several books, it starts to feel more familiar. When a similar event happens in real life, the public may react with less shock or pushback. The reaction becomes calm acceptance instead of outrage. One well-known example comes from the 1999 movie The Matrix. The story shows a world controlled by machines where humans live in a simulated reality. It explores ideas like artificial intelligence, digital identity, and loss of free will. When the movie came out, those ideas felt like science fiction. Today, discussions about AI control, virtual spaces, and digital surveillance are real and common. The film may not have caused those events, but it helped set the stage for public conversation and mental readiness. Another example is Contagion, a 2011 film about a deadly virus that spreads quickly around the world. It shows health experts racing to find a cure, cities shutting down, and people hoarding supplies. The film mirrors much of what happened during the COVID-19 pandemic nearly a decade later. Watching the movie during the pandemic made many people feel like they had already lived through parts of it. That sense of déjà vu may not be accidental. The theory behind predictive programming is simple. Repetition shapes belief. If people see something enough times, it becomes part of their mental world. Fiction creates a safe space to explore ideas. In that space, people can let their guard down. They watch for fun. They don't resist or question the message. But while they relax, the brain still learns. It builds patterns. It stores images and emotions for later use. Some people believe this method is used on purpose by those in power. The idea is that governments, corporations, or other groups use entertainment to test reactions, build acceptance, or manage resistance. If the public seems calm when a difficult topic is shown in a movie, that may signal it's safe to try it in real life. If there is strong pushback, the plan may be delayed, changed, or dropped. Take the idea of mass surveillance. Decades ago, the idea of cameras watching people all the time felt like dystopian fiction. Books like 1984 by George Orwell warned against it. But over time, movies and shows began to treat it as part of life. Spies, hackers, and police used it to catch bad guys. Surveillance became a tool of safety. By the time real cities installed cameras on every corner and phones began tracking locations, few people questioned it. There's also the issue of war and disaster. Many action films show cities destroyed, crowds fleeing, and governments imposing strict control. These scenes are not just visual, they set emotional tones. They show how people behave. They set up a moral code. The hero may follow rules, break them, or create new ones. Viewers watch and learn what is normal or right in chaos. When real disasters happen, that script is already in place in people's minds. Another angle is the use of technology. In older films, things like facial recognition, drone strikes, or self-driving cars felt distant, but their repeated use in fiction helped people get used to them. Today, these technologies are part of life. The shift didn't happen overnight. It was slow and quiet, helped along by years of storytelling. Even fashion and language play a role. A futuristic uniform in a sci-fi film might look strange at first, but if enough popular characters wear it, people may begin to like it. The same goes for phrases. A term like social credit might seem harsh or foreign, but if it's used in several shows as a way to keep peace or reward good behavior, people might accept it more easily later. It's important to note that not all predictive content is planned. Sometimes writers or directors guess what might happen. They study history, science, or trends and use them to build stories. But even when unplanned, the effect can be the same. A story that mirrors future events still has power, whether the writer meant it to or not. Sometimes predictive programming blends fiction with news. A TV show might be set in the near future, showing how society breaks down, how tech firms run the world, or how rules change after a crisis. These stories don't just warn, they suggest outcomes. They shape choices. They help people imagine what's possible, and more importantly, what's acceptable. In some shows, people live in pods, avoid each other, and let machines do all the work. These stories might feel extreme at first, but they plant ideas. They ask viewers to think about trade-offs: comfort versus freedom, safety versus privacy, ease versus connection. By the time such ideas show up in real proposals, the ground is already prepared. Children's media plays a role too. Cartoons and young adult stories often show worlds where authority is strong, choice is limited, and rebellion is managed. These stories can teach obedience, fear, or trust in systems depending on how they are framed. Children may not understand all the details, but they learn the shape of the world. That early framing can last a lifetime. Predictive programming does not need to be evil to be effective. It works because it feels like play. It's not forced, it's not direct. That makes it harder to resist. The mind stores what it sees and hears, even when it's not trying to learn. When the real world starts to match fiction, the mind says, "I've seen this before." That sense of recognition can guide action or inaction. The best way to spot predictive programming is to pay attention to patterns. When the same themes repeat across films, shows, or games, ask why. When unusual events are shown as normal, ask who benefits. And when fiction begins to feel like memory, pause and ask whether that comfort came from truth or from a script written long ago. Neuro-Linguistic Programming, or NLP, is a method used to influence how people think, feel, and behave. It uses patterns in language, tone of voice, and body movement to send messages directly to the subconscious mind. The goal is to bypass the conscious mind, which tends to question and resist, and instead reach the deeper part of the brain, where habits and beliefs live. At its core, NLP is based on the idea that the brain runs like a program. The way people speak, the words they choose, the tone they use, and even how they move all reflect their inner thoughts. By noticing and copying these patterns, someone trained in NLP can build a strong connection called rapport. Once that connection is in place, they can begin to guide thoughts and actions in subtle ways. Imagine someone is afraid to speak in public. A person trained in NLP might first match that person's body posture, breathing rhythm, and tone of voice. This makes the other person feel more at ease, as if they are with someone who understands them. Then, through simple language shifts, the NLP user might say something like, "You might begin to feel more comfortable," even without knowing why. This sentence avoids telling the person what to do. Instead, it gently plants the idea that comfort is coming, and that it can happen naturally. The structure of the sentence matters. Saying "you might begin" creates space. It doesn't force the person to act. It offers a suggestion, which makes the mind less likely to resist. Saying "even without knowing why" removes the need to analyze or figure things out. The subconscious likes this. It can follow along without getting stopped by logic. Tone of voice also plays a big role. A calm, steady tone makes the message feel safe. A slight pause before key words helps them stand out. For example, in the sentence "you can now feel calm," the pause before calm adds weight. The word drops into the mind more deeply, almost like a seed being planted. Body language works the same way. When someone nods slowly while saying a suggestion, the listener's brain often mirrors the motion. If a speaker looks relaxed and confident, the listener may feel more secure. Eye contact, hand gestures, and the way someone stands all send signals that support or weaken the message. One tool in NLP is called pacing and leading. Pacing means describing what's already true. This builds agreement. For example, "You're sitting here reading these words and thinking about how this works. All of those are true right now." That puts the mind in a yes state. Then comes the lead, and you can begin to notice a shift. That part is a suggestion. Because the earlier statements felt true, the brain is more open to accept the next part as well. Another technique is anchoring. This links a feeling or state to a sound, touch, or word. A classic example involves touching a certain point on the hand when someone feels calm. After doing this a few times, just touching that spot can bring the calm feeling back. This works because the brain ties the physical cue to the emotional state. Politicians and speakers often use this by repeating a gesture every time they make a strong point. Later, just the gesture alone brings back the feeling of power or truth. NLP also makes use of embedded commands. These are instructions hidden inside longer sentences. For example, instead of saying "relax now," someone might say, "When you think about your day, you may find it easier to relax now and let go." The command "relax now" is hidden in a natural sentence. The conscious mind focuses on the full sentence, but the subconscious picks up the instruction. Stories can also carry suggestions. This is called metaphor. If someone says, "I once knew a man who couldn't sleep, but then he found a way to quiet his thoughts and rest," the story is about someone else, but the listener's mind often takes it personally. The brain starts to think, "If that worked for him, maybe it can work for me too." This is a soft way to guide belief and change. Matching a person's sensory language can also build influence. Some people think in pictures, others in sounds, others in feelings. If someone says, "I can't see the big picture," that tells you they are using visual terms. A good response might be, "Let's take a closer look together." If they say, "It doesn't sound right," then replying with "Let's tune into the details" will feel more natural to them. This kind of match builds trust, which opens the door for deeper suggestions. Imagine a manager using NLP in a meeting. They want a team to support a new policy. First, they begin by stating facts everyone agrees on. "We've all worked hard this quarter. We've faced some real challenges, and we've stayed focused." Then they add, "Now you may already feel a sense of progress." This is a lead. It suggests success without forcing it. Then comes the suggestion, and that makes it easier to embrace what comes next. The team may not notice the structure of the message, but they may still feel more open to the change. NLP is used in sales, therapy, politics, and even parenting. In therapy, it might help someone change a limiting belief. If a person says, "I always fail," the therapist might reframe that by saying, "You've had moments where things didn't go as planned, but you also kept going." That shift in language opens a door. It changes how the brain sees the past. In sales, a person might say, "Many people feel unsure at first, but once they see how this works, they realize it's a smart move." This blends pacing people feel unsure with leading. They realize it's smart. It respects doubt, but also moves past it. Critics of NLP say it lacks scientific proof. Many studies haven't shown strong results in lab settings. Still, the methods work well in real conversations, where tone, timing, and trust matter more than numbers. Some people use NLP to help, others use it to manipulate. The difference lies in intent. The power of NLP is not in magic words, it's in attention. A person who listens closely, speaks with care, and watches for signs of emotion can guide a conversation in almost any direction. The tools are simple: match the person, speak their language, pace their experience, then suggest something better. If the person feels seen and safe, they often follow the path that's laid out for them. Whether they realize it or not, they may begin to think or act in new ways, quietly shaped by the words and tone they've just heard. Mass hypnosis through media happens when large numbers of people fall into a suggestible state. This doesn't mean people fall asleep or walk around like robots. It means their critical thinking slows down, and they accept ideas more easily. The key to this effect is emotion. When media content keeps hitting the same feelings like fear, awe, or outrage, it changes how the brain works in the moment. Imagine watching a news program. It starts with breaking stories about violence, disasters, or political chaos. Every headline seems urgent. The voices are firm. The music builds tension. Graphics flash across the screen. Each segment stirs a sense of threat or crisis. When this pattern repeats every day, it can create a background state of anxiety. The brain starts to expect danger, even when there is none in sight. When fear kicks in, the brain shifts its focus. It doesn't want analysis or debate, it wants survival. The part of the brain that handles logic slows down. The emotional center speeds up. That's when people become more open to suggestions, even if those suggestions don't make much sense. The message doesn't have to be true. It just has to feel like it might keep them safe. Media content often uses powerful images: a burning building, a crying child, a crowd of angry people. These images don't just inform, they trigger responses. The heart rate goes up, muscles tense. The viewer isn't just watching anymore, they're inside the moment, reacting as if it's real for them. In that state, the brain absorbs ideas faster. It stores memories linked to emotion. It's more likely to believe what it hears during that time. This is why advertisers use emotion too. A soft voice, warm lighting, and gentle music can make a viewer feel comfort. That feeling gets tied to the product. In the same way, fear and outrage can be tied to people, groups, or ideas. If a certain face appears during bad news often enough, the viewer may start to feel distrust toward that person, even if they've done nothing wrong. The feeling came first. The logic came later, if at all. Symbols play a strong role in mass hypnosis. A flag, a logo, a mask, or a uniform can carry heavy meaning. These symbols often appear alongside music, chants, or repeated phrases. Over time, the brain links the symbol with the emotion. A national anthem may stir pride. A black and white photo of a past event may stir guilt or sadness. None of this happens by accident. Media teams often plan these moments with great care. Some shows use awe instead of fear. They show a hero overcoming odds, or a miracle that saves the day. These stories spark a sense of wonder. They make the viewer feel small or inspired. In this emotional space, viewers become more open. They feel lifted up, pulled out of their normal state. That's another moment when new ideas can slip in easily. A narrator might say something like, "Together we can rise." The words are vague, but they feel good. They land without resistance. Mass hypnosis works best when the message repeats. One report about a threat may cause worry, but 10 reports in a row about similar threats can build a new belief. If every show on TV says a certain group is dangerous, people begin to feel it's true, even if they never meet anyone from that group. The pattern sets in. The brain doesn't like conflict. It wants to match what it hears with what it feels. Repetition removes the need to think. The idea becomes automatic. Outrage is also a strong tool. It creates a sense of injustice. It makes people want to act or speak up. But when outrage comes day after day, it turns into a cycle. The viewer feels angry, but powerless. They get hooked on the feeling. They keep watching, hoping for relief. But relief doesn't come. The media keeps feeding more outrage, keeping the audience in a state of tension. That's another form of control. When people stay angry, they stop asking good questions. Live events can create even stronger effects. A breaking news report, a major speech, or a viral video can move millions at once. The shared timing matters. When many people feel the same emotion at the same time, the energy spreads. It feels like something big is happening. People want to be part of it. They lower their guard to join the group. This is often called a collective moment. During that window, the message being sent has much more power. The background of media matters too. The music under a report, the lighting on a news set, even the angle of a camera can change how a story feels. A subject filmed from below looks powerful. One filmed in dim light looks guilty. These small choices stack up. They shape how the viewer feels about what they see. Often they never notice the tricks. Even humor can play a role. A late-night comedy show might make fun of a serious issue. Laughter creates release. It makes people feel safe, but it also hides the message. If a joke makes someone look foolish again and again, viewers may adopt that view without thinking. They laugh, they agree, they move on, holding a new belief they didn't choose on purpose. Social media adds another layer. On these platforms, emotional posts rise to the top. The ones that shock, scare, or please get shared the most. The result is an endless loop of strong emotion. Users scroll through fear, joy, and anger in seconds. This keeps the brain in a high state of alert. When that becomes normal, quiet thinking becomes rare. The user becomes easy to guide, just by pushing the right emotional button. Over time, these methods create habits. A person wakes up and turns on the news, expecting fear. They scroll their feed, looking for outrage. They talk to friends using phrases they heard in a clip. Their thoughts aren't random. They follow a path laid out by content made to trigger them. This is not a one-time trick. It is a pattern, reinforced every day. The key to mass hypnosis is not control of the screen. It is control of attention. If media can hold your attention with emotion, it can lead your thoughts. It doesn't need facts. It doesn't need proof. It just needs to keep you watching, feeling, and absorbing. In that state, ideas pass through without resistance. You don't argue with the message. You feel it. And once you feel it, it becomes part of how you see the world. Fear-based conditioning is a method that shapes behavior by using fear as a trigger. When people face constant threats, whether real or not, they tend to seek safety. Over time, they become more willing to give up certain freedoms or control if they believe it will keep them safe. This kind of conditioning doesn't need to use direct threats. It works by repeating messages, stories, or warnings that keep the fear alive. Picture this. A person turns on the news in the morning and sees a report about rising crime. Later, a podcast warns about a new virus mutation. On the way to work, a billboard flashes a message about climate disaster. At lunch, co-workers share videos of violence or unrest in other cities. By the end of the day, the person has seen dozens of messages pointing to danger. Their body responds with tension. Their thoughts become focused on threat. They may not even notice it, but they are now more likely to support new laws, rules, or systems that promise protection. This method isn't new. Throughout history, leaders have used fear to shape public behavior. In times of war, governments often ask for more control. They frame it as temporary, but it becomes normal. People who feel afraid are less likely to question authority. They want order. They want someone to take charge. Fear removes the space needed for careful thought. The brain plays a big role here. When people feel safe, they use the parts of the brain that handle planning and reason. But when people feel fear, the brain switches modes. It activates the survival system, what many call fight or flight. In this state, logic takes a back seat. Fast choices take over. It's easier to agree with strong voices. It's harder to think for yourself. This shift happens even if the fear isn't based on direct experience. A person doesn't need to be in a car crash to fear driving. They just need to hear enough stories, see enough images, or know enough people who say it's dangerous. This is how conditioning works. The fear doesn't need to come from one large event. It builds slowly, with repeated exposure. Think about a public health message that warns of illness. At first, the message is clear: wash your hands, avoid contact, stay alert. But if the warnings keep coming every day, and the tone stays urgent, people begin to expect danger around every corner. When that feeling grows, people are more likely to follow rules without question. They may accept tracking apps, health passes, or stay-at-home orders, not because they trust the system, but because they fear the unknown. Media can increase this effect. Many platforms rely on engagement. Stories that scare people get more clicks. Fear grabs attention. It keeps people watching, reading, or scrolling. This creates a loop. The more fear-based content people consume, the more the platforms show them. Soon the feed becomes full of worst-case stories. Even if those stories are rare, they feel common. When this happens across many topics, violence, health, money, weather, it shapes a worldview. A person begins to think the world is falling apart. They become more willing to hand over choices to someone who seems in control. They may not like it, but the trade feels worth it. Less freedom in exchange for less fear. Children can also be conditioned this way. If schools repeat messages about threat, strangers, climate, violence, young minds may grow up seeing danger as the norm. These children may become adults who accept more rules and more monitoring. They may think of control, not as a burden, but as a comfort. Social groups play a role too. If fear spreads in a community, people may pressure each other to follow certain behaviors. A person who steps outside the group's comfort zone may be shamed or pushed aside. The fear isn't just about the threat, it's about being left out, being wrong, or being blamed. For example, during a financial crisis, news outlets may focus on failing banks, job losses, or stock crashes. Even if a person has savings and steady work, they may still feel panic. If a new policy appears that promises to protect retirement funds or freeze debt, they may support it quickly. They don't check the long-term cost. They just want relief from the stress. The same pattern happens with public safety. A rise in crime stories, even if crime rates are falling, can lead people to support tougher laws, curfews, or more police power. They feel it's better to act fast than wait. When fear takes the lead, even a mild risk feels large. This kind of conditioning can also be used in workplaces. A company may send repeated warnings about security risks, deadlines, or job performance. Over time, workers may feel anxious about doing anything outside the norm. They may stop offering new ideas or speaking up, even if the system is flawed. They focus on staying safe within the rules. Over time, fear-based conditioning can change how a society functions. People may value safety over freedom. They may stop asking why rules exist. They may see those who question authority as threats. In this kind of culture, control becomes easier to apply. Each new restriction feels like a natural next step. Few people resist because they've been trained not to. The conditioning doesn't need to be harsh. It works best when it's quiet. A slow drip of fear creates lasting effects. The person may not even realize they've changed. They just feel more tired, more anxious, and more likely to go along with what seems safe. Breaking this cycle starts with awareness. People must learn to notice when fear is being used to shape their views. This means asking, is this threat real for me? Is the risk as large as it seems? Who gains if I feel afraid? These questions can slow the reaction. They create space for thought. Fear can serve a purpose. It can warn of danger. It can push people to act with care. But when it's used as a tool of control, fear becomes a weapon. It stops free thought. It replaces choice with reaction. And once that shift becomes normal, people may not know how to return to a life where safety doesn't mean surrender. Repetition for indoctrination is a method used to shape belief through constant exposure to the same message. When a phrase, slogan, or idea is repeated often enough, it begins to sink in. At first, the message may seem odd, untrue, or even silly, but over time, the brain starts to accept it without thinking. This is not about learning or debate. It's about training the mind to accept something through sheer volume. The human brain likes patterns. When it hears or sees something again and again, it begins to recognize it as familiar. Familiar things feel safer, even if they aren't true. This is why repetition is used in advertising, politics, and education. The goal is not just to inform but to shape how people think. Picture a classroom where the teacher begins each day by saying, "Our country is the greatest in the world." The students hear this every morning. They don't discuss what it means. They don't ask questions. They just repeat the phrase together. After a while, the idea becomes part of how they see the world. They believe it, not because they thought about it, but because they said it so often. This method is not limited to schools. Governments use repetition in speeches and public campaigns. Leaders choose short, strong phrases that are easy to remember. They repeat them across every platform: radio, TV, online, in speeches, and in print. Supporters repeat these lines in conversation. Critics repeat them while arguing. Either way, the phrase spreads. It becomes part of the public mind. In wartime, repetition becomes even more powerful. A nation might use posters, songs, and daily announcements to repeat messages like "Support the troops" or "The enemy wants to destroy us." These lines are not just slogans, they are tools. The more people hear them, the more they act in line with them. They buy war bonds, accept new laws, or report neighbors, all because the repeated message created a sense of duty or fear. Advertising uses the same principle. A brand will run the same commercial many times across many channels. The first time you hear a jingle or slogan, it might seem annoying. The 10th time, it's stuck in your head. The 100th time, you trust the brand without knowing why. You might not even like the product, but when you see it on the shelf, you recognize it. That recognition feels like trust, and trust leads to action. News media also uses repetition. When a story breaks, every outlet covers it. They use the same words: crisis, breaking news, outrage. The details may differ, but the emotional tone stays the same. Viewers feel alarmed, even if they don't fully understand the issue. If the same story appears every day for a week, it starts to feel bigger than it is. Other stories fade into the background. The repeated topic becomes the main one in people's minds. Social media makes repetition faster. A phrase that trends once can come back over and over. Hashtags, memes, and short clips spread quickly. People share them without thinking. Some do it to support the message, others do it to mock it, but the result is the same. The message spreads. The more screens it touches, the more minds it reaches. Political campaigns depend on this. Candidates repeat slogans at every rally, in every ad, and on every sign. Their teams choose words that stick. Yes, we can. Make it happen. Keep us safe. These slogans carry emotion. They don't explain policy. They create belief. Voters may not remember the platform, but they remember the line, and that line shapes how they vote. Religious and ideological groups also use repetition. Prayers, chants, and daily rituals build belief through rhythm and routine. The act of repeating a phrase can create peace or certainty. Over time, the words feel true, not because of proof, but because they've become part of the person's thinking. Repetition wears down resistance. The first time someone hears a bold claim, they might push back, they might say it's wrong, or ask for proof. But after hearing it many times, they may stop reacting. They may still doubt it, but not as strongly. Then the message becomes background noise. then it becomes accepted fact. This shift happens slowly, the person may not even notice it. A simple example is the phrase, "You get what you pay for." This line appears in ads, reviews and advice columns. It suggests that higher price means higher quality. That's not always true, but the phrase is repeated so often that people believe it without checking. They spend more, not because the product is better, but because they trust the line. In some cases, repetition is used to distort reality. A news outlet might report the same version of a story across multiple shows. They might bring on guests who all say the same thing. Over time, the viewer forgets other versions. They believe the story as it was told, not as it was. Even if a correction comes later, the original version sticks. The repeated message is stronger than the truth that followed. Repetition can also change language. Over time, certain terms become normal, even if they were once seen as extreme. Words like collateral damage replace civilian deaths. Enhanced interrogation replaces torture. These new terms are repeated in reports and speeches. They make harsh actions sound technical or clean. Once people hear them enough, they stop asking what they really mean. In the workplace, repetition shapes culture. If a manager keeps saying, "We're a family here," workers may feel pressure to act loyal. They may take on extra work, avoid complaints, or stay silent about problems. The phrase doesn't reflect the actual environment. It sets a tone, and the more it's repeated, the more it shapes behavior. Children's shows use repetition for learning. A character may sing the same song about sharing or kindness in every episode. The goal is to teach values through memory, but this same method can teach bias. If a certain type of person is always the villain, the viewer may start to connect that type with bad traits. This isn't direct teaching, it's shaping through pattern. In times of crisis, leaders often repeat simple rules: stay home, stay safe, flatten the curve. These phrases are easy to remember. They focus people's attention. They cut through the noise, but they can also shut down thought. If someone questions the rule, they may be seen as dangerous or selfish. The slogan becomes more than a reminder. It becomes a test of loyalty. Repetition for indoctrination works because the mind takes shortcuts. It prefers known over unknown. It feels safer when it hears the same message from many sources. That message becomes part of how a person sees the world. They may not even know they've changed. They just start to believe what they've heard the most. Trauma-based programming is a method that uses intense stress or fear to break down a person's mind. When someone goes through trauma, whether real or simulated, it can shatter how they see themselves and the world. In this state, they become easier to control. The idea is that once a person's natural defenses are broken, new ideas, commands, or behaviors can be planted deep in the mind. The most well-known example tied to this concept is MK Ultra. This was a covert project run by the CIA in the 1950s and 1960s. It aimed to test how drugs, isolation, hypnosis, and other forms of mental pressure could be used to control human behavior. Some victims were given LSD without consent. Others were kept in dark rooms, deprived of sleep, or exposed to repeated messages while sedated. These methods were designed to erase memory, weaken the mind, and create suggestibility. Trauma affects how the brain stores and processes information. When a person experiences something overwhelming, the brain often can't sort it out in real time. It may break the memory into fragments. It may push it away entirely. In some cases, the brain creates alternate identities or dissociative states as a way to survive. This happens in cases of repeated abuse, such as in children who grow up in violent homes. Each identity holds a part of the experience. The main identity stays unaware. This division makes the mind easier to shape, because each part can be reached and programmed separately. In trauma-based programming, handlers, often called programmers, try to use this natural mental response on purpose. They may cause trauma and then insert commands while the person is in shock. They might say certain phrases over and over. They might use visual symbols, music, or touch to lock the command in place. Later, When the person hears the same phrase or sees the same symbol, they react automatically. They may follow an order, forget a memory, or switch to a different identity. These triggers can be planted so deeply that the person has no idea they were programmed. This method is not only found in secret projects, it can appear in more subtle ways in institutions, media, or high-control groups. In cults, for example, leaders may use fear, punishment, or group shaming to push members into obedience. They may isolate people from family, restrict food or sleep, and demand full attention. Over time, the constant stress wears down the person's will. They begin to rely on the leader to tell them what is real and what isn't. Some military training also includes trauma elements. Recruits are broken down physically and mentally, then rebuilt to follow orders without question. While not always malicious, the method still relies on stress to shape the mind. When used with care and limits, it can build discipline, but in the wrong hands, it can strip away autonomy. A simulated trauma can have similar effects. A person doesn't need to be in real danger to feel fear. Watching staged violence, hearing loud sounds, or going through extreme emotional events can produce trauma-like responses. Virtual reality, for instance, can create strong fear reactions. A person wearing a headset may feel like they're falling, drowning, or being attacked. If this is used with repetition and precise timing, it can act as a kind of programming. Some believe that this method appears in pop culture in symbolic form. Music videos, movies, or performances may show scenes of bondage, isolation, or dual personalities. Viewers may not notice the patterns, but the images plant emotional responses. For people who have already been programmed, these scenes may act as triggers. They may reinforce control, activate a mental state, or remind the subject of earlier trauma. Children are more vulnerable to trauma-based methods. Their brains are still forming. They don't have the tools to make sense of abuse or intense fear. If a child is repeatedly exposed to trauma, they may grow up with deep mental splits. These splits can be used by others to implant ideas, behaviors, or commands. For example, a child may be told they are worthless, then comforted by the same person who caused the harm. This creates confusion. The child bonds with the abuser. They learn to obey, hoping for safety. This dynamic can continue into adulthood. In advanced forms of trauma-based programming, subjects are taught to forget what happened. A programmer may say, "You will not remember this. It was only a dream." Then when the subject wakes up, they recall nothing. If done well, the person may live a normal life on the surface, but certain triggers can bring back fragments. A sound, smell, or word may pull up a hidden memory or state. The person may not understand what is happening. They may feel like they're losing control or having a panic attack. In reality, the mind is reacting to a buried command. To keep control, programmers use layers. Each identity or mental state may have its own rules, memories, and role. One part may be trained for violence. Another may serve as a front, acting normal in public. Another may hold pain or shame. This keeps the person fragmented. They can't see the full picture. If one part tries to speak out, another part shuts it down. This inner conflict stops the person from breaking free. This type of programming requires planning and time. It's not easy to do by accident, but the principles behind it, fear, confusion, isolation, and repetition, are used in many areas of life. Prisons, boarding schools, detention centers, and even some families use these tools to maintain control. The effects may not be as deep as in formal programming, but the goal is the same: to break resistance and shape behavior. Therapists who work with survivors of this kind of trauma often hear similar patterns. Clients describe time loss, strange dreams, or voices in their head. They may have flashbacks without knowing the source. They may fear certain colors, phrases, or people without knowing why. With care, some recover memories and begin to heal, but it takes time. The mind created walls for a reason. Breaking them too fast can cause more harm. When people dismiss trauma-based programming as fantasy, they overlook how the brain actually works. Trauma is real. Its effects are proven. It changes the brain's wiring, especially in early life. If someone wanted to control another person's mind, trauma would be a natural tool. It opens a door that can be hard to close. That's why stories of MKUltra and related programs still matter. They show what is possible when power is used without limits. Manufactured consent is the process of shaping public agreement by limiting what people see, hear, and know. It gives the appearance of choice, but the range of acceptable views is tightly controlled. People believe they are making informed decisions, but those decisions come from a narrow set of options. The goal is to guide public opinion in a certain direction without using force. The term gained attention through the work of Noam Chomsky and Edward Herman. They described how media systems work together with powerful interests, like governments and corporations, to influence how people think. Instead of using censorship, these systems manage consent by deciding which stories get attention, which voices are heard, and which facts are repeated. Imagine a news outlet that covers a protest. Thousands of people march in peace, but a few get into a fight. The camera focuses only on the fight. The voiceover talks about chaos. The words on the screen say violent mob. Viewers never see the speeches, the signs, or the purpose of the protest. They only see the conflict. Later, when asked about the event, they say it looked dangerous. That opinion feels like their own, but it came from carefully selected content. Manufactured consent works best when the same message comes from many places. One outlet runs a story, others repeat it with the same terms. Experts are brought in to confirm the message. Social media accounts amplify it. Over time, it feels like everyone agrees. Any view outside that frame is ignored, mocked, or labeled extreme. The result is a fake consensus. People think they are in the majority, even if they've never looked closely at the issue. In war, this tool becomes especially powerful. Leaders may want to send troops into a new conflict. To gain support, they highlight a threat. They show images of victims. They use strong emotional language. Reporters ask few hard questions. Soon, headlines say the public wants action. Polls show rising support, but that support was shaped by the stories people were shown. They weren't told about failed talks, alternative responses, or the cost of war. They didn't consent freely. Their choice was managed. A more subtle form appears in advertising. A company may pay for content that looks like news. A video says a product solves a common problem. A blog post ranks it as number one. A celebrity uses it in public. Viewers trust the information because it looks independent. But each message is placed on purpose. The buyer doesn't feel pushed, they feel informed. The purchase seems like their own idea. Education can also play a role. If textbooks leave out certain facts or present one view as truth, students form opinions based on gaps. They aren't told what to think outright. But by leaving out key points or repeating certain messages, the system pushes them toward a preferred view. Years later, those same students may repeat the ideas without knowing where they came from. Entertainment spreads consent too. A movie might show a police officer breaking the law to stop a criminal. The story paints this as brave. Viewers cheer because the film builds tension, then delivers relief. Over time, they become more open to the idea that rules can be bent for safety. No one told them to think this way. The feeling came from the story. The lesson stays because it was tied to emotion. Manufactured consent often relies on what is left out. A story might cover a flood but skip the role of poor planning or weak infrastructure. A debate may include two sides that differ only slightly. Viewers think they've seen the full picture, but the range of ideas is kept small. Those with new or challenging views don't get airtime, or if they do, they are framed as fringe, unstable, or unqualified. Sometimes certain voices are overrepresented. A small group might support a new policy, but they have access to large platforms. They get interviewed, quoted, and shared. Their view becomes dominant not because of size but because of reach. Others who disagree have no such access. The consent is not from numbers, it's from volume. This method can shape everyday beliefs. If every article says a city is becoming safer, people feel safer, even if crime hasn't changed. If every source praises a new policy, people may support it without reading the details. They trust the message because it comes from multiple places. They forget that all those places might trace back to the same funding, owner, or strategy. Crisis moments amplify this tool. During a pandemic, for example, people need quick information. They turn to trusted sources. If those sources repeat one set of instructions and silence others, the public follows a single path. Some voices might question the plan or offer new ideas, but if those voices are removed from the conversation, the public never hears them. They believe they've chosen safety. In truth, they were never shown a full set of options. Think of a company accused of wrongdoing. Its public relations team works fast. They contact journalists, sponsor content, and push a narrative. They admit minor faults but frame themselves as responsible. They fund studies that favor their view. They highlight partnerships, donations, or social good. Over time, the image is restored. Consumers forget the original issue. They believe the company did the right thing. But that belief was shaped, not earned. Manufactured consent doesn't require lies. It works through framing, tone, and focus. The same fact can sound different depending on how it's told. Saying 10 jobs lost sounds small. Saying company downsizes to increase profits sounds cold. Saying firm adjusts workforce in line with growth goals sounds neutral. All describe the same event, but each version guides emotion differently. Over time, those small shifts shape public understanding. Even search engines play a role. The top results shape what people see first. If one view dominates the first page, users may never reach other sources. They stop after the first answer. Their consent is based on convenience, not full knowledge. To maintain manufactured consent, dissent must stay quiet or chaotic. Critics are framed as angry, confused, or extreme. Platforms may remove their content or limit its reach. If they are allowed to speak, it's often in a way that makes them look weak or scattered. This keeps the main message clear and smooth. Most people follow what feels calm, clear, and popular. People don't have to be fooled to be managed. Most are busy. They rely on trusted voices to make sense of the world. If those voices are part of the consent machine, people accept the frame without knowing it. They say, everyone agrees, but they only saw what was allowed. Their agreement feels personal, but it was shaped before they ever spoke. False flag operations are planned events where those responsible make it seem like someone else is to blame. The goal is to trigger a specific public reaction that supports a plan already in place. This strategy uses a simple pattern: create a problem, watch the reaction, then offer the solution that was waiting from the start. The term false flag comes from naval warfare. In battle, a ship might raise the enemy's flag to trick others. Once close enough, it would lower the false flag and strike. Today, the term refers to events where the true origin is hidden and another group is blamed. These events are often used to sway public opinion, justify new laws, or launch military action. One of the oldest examples comes from 1931, when the Japanese military blew up a section of their own railway in Manchuria. They blamed Chinese troops. This gave Japan the excuse to invade the region, claiming self-defense. Years later, officials admitted the attack was staged. Another case took place in 1939, just before Germany invaded Poland. German forces dressed as Polish soldiers and attacked a German radio station near the border. They left behind the bodies of prisoners in Polish uniforms to make it look real. This staged attack gave Hitler a reason to start the war. He told the public that Germany had been attacked and had no choice but to respond. These events followed the same structure. First, something violent or shocking happens. Then leaders appear with clear answers and strong words. They say who did it. They say what must happen next. People, shaken by fear or anger, support the plan without question. They rarely ask who benefits or whether the story makes sense. The key part of a false flag operation is control of the narrative. If those in charge can control media, they can shape how the event is seen. They decide which images are shown, which experts are heard, and which voices are silenced. This builds a clear message: the enemy is known, and action is urgent. Think about how this might work in a modern setting. A city suffers a major attack. A bomb explodes during a public event. News spreads fast. Officials quickly name a suspect group. They release images, they show footage. The news repeats the same phrases. Within hours, lawmakers propose emergency powers, more surveillance, stricter laws and limits on protest. Most people agree. They want safety, they want action. They accept the loss of freedom without asking if the event was truly what it seemed. This pattern, problem, reaction, solution, is powerful. It moves people from fear to acceptance. When used well, it avoids debate. The shock makes people focus on emotion, not facts. They act on fear, not reason. Later, even if new evidence appears, the damage is done. The new rules stay. The public memory fades. False flags are not always large attacks. They can be small events that shift public mood. A staged protest can turn violent with the help of undercover actors. Once the footage spreads, the whole movement is labeled as dangerous. Laws against assembly follow, or a fake leak about a foreign threat appears in the news. Tension grows. Military budgets rise. The goal is the same: create a reason for a response that already has support behind the scenes. Sometimes these operations are never fully proven, but the signs can still be read. When a violent event brings fast policy change, it's worth asking who benefits. If the accused group gains nothing, and the state gains more power, it's worth looking closer. If media avoids questions and repeats only one view, it's worth thinking about why. During the Cold War, many feared that false flag operations could be used to spark nuclear war. Documents released years later showed that some military leaders in the United States had drawn up plans to stage attacks on American soil and blame Cuba. These plans, part of a file called Operation Northwoods, included ideas like blowing up a US ship or faking a hijacking. President Kennedy rejected the plans, and they never happened, but the fact that such plans were written shows how this thinking worked. False flags don't need to trick everyone. They only need to guide public emotion long enough to pass a policy, remove a threat, or start a conflict. Once the event has done its job, it fades into history. If questions come later, they are dismissed as conspiracy. Those who ask are called unpatriotic or unstable. In the digital age, false flags can take new forms. A cyber attack may appear to come from one country, while another set it up. A fake document may be leaked to provoke public outrage. A violent video may be shared without context to spark protests. These tools are faster, harder to trace, and easier to hide behind layers of code or bots. To protect against false flag operations, people must ask hard questions during emotional moments. Who benefits from this event? Was the response planned before the problem? Is the evidence clear, or just repeated? When the same answer comes from every direction with no space for doubt, it's worth stepping back. Governments and powerful groups often claim they need more control to protect people. False flags are one way to create the fear that justifies that control. If the fear feels urgent, and the response feels ready-made, it may not be an accident. The public sees a threat, but behind the threat, someone else holds the plan. Cognitive dissonance happens when a person holds two or more ideas that don't fit together. The conflict creates mental discomfort. To ease that discomfort, the person looks for a way to make the ideas match. This is a normal part of how the brain works. But when someone knows how to use that discomfort to guide decisions, it becomes a tool. The goal is to create a mental conflict and then offer a way out. The solution often involves agreeing with the person or group who caused the confusion in the first place. This method works because the human brain does not like contradiction. When a belief and an action don't line up, people feel uneasy. They either change what they believe or adjust their behavior to reduce the stress. If someone thinks of themselves as honest but tells a lie, the tension in their mind demands a fix. They might justify the lie by saying it helped someone. They might change how they see honesty. Either way, they need to feel right again. Those who use cognitive dissonance as a control method understand this process. They don't need to force anyone to believe something directly. Instead, they create conditions that cause confusion and discomfort. Then they offer a clear, simple way to feel balanced again. That path usually involves obedience, agreement, or surrender of critical thinking. Consider a workplace that promotes values like openness and equality. At the same time, it rewards only those who stay silent about problems or follow the company line. An employee may believe the company cares about fairness, but when they speak up about bias and get punished, that belief is shaken. They now face two opposing ideas. The company values fairness, but it punishes fairness. This gap creates dissonance. The employee can either believe the company is flawed or believe they misunderstood fairness. If they want to keep their job and avoid stress, they may adopt the second idea. They may begin to see silence as fairness. Over time, they adjust not because of truth, but because of mental pressure. Another example comes from political messaging. A leader may say, "We must protect freedom," then pass laws that reduce freedom. Citizens who value liberty now face a split. They support freedom, but they also trust the leader. To fix this discomfort, they may tell themselves the restrictions are temporary or for the greater good. They may defend the laws, not because they agree with them, but because they need to resolve the tension in their minds. The method becomes more effective when used with repetition. Contradictions are introduced again and again. One day, a rule says one thing. The next day, it says the opposite. Officials speak in vague terms. Definitions change. Over time, people stop trying to understand. The confusion itself becomes the point. In the middle of that confusion, the person or group offering a simple solution gains more power. The offer sounds like relief. Just follow this rule. Trust us. Don't ask too many questions. These paths feel easier than living with mental stress. Mass media can support this strategy. News programs may report facts one day and change the story the next. They may show clips out of context, use experts who contradict each other, or focus on emotion instead of clarity. The viewer begins to feel like they can't tell what's true when the same outlet offers a summary or a slogan. Here's what to think. The viewer accepts it. The choice removes the burden of sorting through the mess. In cults, cognitive dissonance is used with careful timing. A new member is told the group is based on love and truth. Then, they witness abuse or dishonesty. They feel shock, but they're told the action was part of a higher plan. They are told to question their own understanding. You're not ready to see the full truth. Your doubts mean you're still growing. Instead of leaving, they question themselves. The contradiction draws them deeper, not away. They stay, trying to fix the tension by adopting the group's view. Education systems can use similar pressure. A student might be taught that critical thinking is important, but only if it leads to approved conclusions. If they question core ideas, they face penalties. Over time, they learn to stop asking and start agreeing. Their beliefs may shift, not because they discovered truth, but because they needed relief from mental strain. Marketing uses this tactic too. An ad may say, "Be unique, be yourself," while showing a product used by millions. The viewer wants to be unique, but also wants to belong. The solution is to buy the product, which is framed as both personal and popular. The contradiction is hidden behind style. The purchase eases the discomfort between standing out and fitting in. In some cases, the contradiction is pushed to an extreme. A person may be told they are completely free, but every action is tracked. They are told they have a voice, but no one listens. These gaps are not accidents. They wear down resistance. The mind, unable to solve the puzzle, looks for the fastest escape. Obedience becomes a way to stop the internal noise. Leaders who use this tool often appear calm and certain. Their confidence offers shelter from confusion. They speak in strong, clear terms after periods of chaos. Even if their actions caused the chaos, they appear as the solution. People cling to their message, not because it is true, but because it ends the dissonance. The method works even better when people have no space to think. If someone is busy, stressed, or distracted, they have less room to notice contradictions. If they do notice, they have no energy to question. The fastest path is to believe whatever resolves the conflict. This is why systems that use this method often create pressure in other areas: long work hours, social tension, fear of judgment. Each layer of stress adds to the desire for mental peace. Digital platforms can feed this process. One post says a thing is true, the next says it's false. Users scroll past both, unsure what to believe. Then a trusted voice steps in and says, "Here's what it really means." The platform promotes this view, silencing others. The user accepts it, not from knowledge, but from fatigue. The confusion was real. The clarity was staged. Cognitive dissonance is not always bad. It can lead to growth. When someone faces a contradiction, they may dig deeper, ask better questions, and change for the better. But when it is used as a tool of control, it stops thought. It replaces inquiry with submission. The mind learns not to resolve conflict through reason, but to end it through surrender. This shift may feel like peace, but it often comes at the cost of freedom. Social proof manipulation is the practice of making something look popular or widely accepted when it isn't. People tend to follow the crowd. They assume if others approve of something, it must be good, safe, or true. This is called social proof. It's a shortcut the brain uses to make decisions faster. Instead of checking facts, people look at what others are doing. When that proof is fake, it leads to false beliefs and poor choices. Marketers, political groups, and even governments use this tactic to shape public opinion. The tools they use include bots, fake reviews, paid influencers, and staged testimonials. The goal is not to prove a message right, but to make it look popular. Once something seems popular, people are more likely to repeat it, share it, or agree with it, without checking if it's real. One example is the use of bots on social media. Bots are automated accounts that act like real users. They can like, comment, share, and follow. A post that gets 1 or 2 likes may be ignored, but if it shows thousands of likes and shares, people stop and look. They assume the message has value. They may agree just to fit in. The original message may be false or misleading, but it now carries the weight of fake agreement. Imagine a new diet product appears online. It has a few honest reviews, but sales are slow. The company hires a service that posts hundreds of fake 5-star ratings. Influencers post photos with the product, claiming big results. Suddenly it seems like everyone is using it. Visitors to the page think they've found something proven. They buy it, not because of facts, but because of the false sense of consensus. This tactic works in politics too. A campaign might flood comment sections with posts supporting a candidate. These posts may come from a mix of paid users and fake accounts. News stories about the campaign start using words like momentum or surge. Other people see the support and begin to believe the candidate is gaining ground. They may join in, thinking they're late to a growing movement. The original boost was artificial, but it triggered a real response. Staged testimonials also play a role. A video might show people on the street praising a product or idea. The people may be actors, not random citizens. Their words are scripted, their reactions are rehearsed, but the viewer sees a mix of faces and hears emotional stories. It feels real. It feels like proof. The viewer accepts the message, not because it was tested, but because it came with a human face. Influencers are another key part of this system. Many have large audiences built on trust. When they endorse something, their followers often accept it without question. Some influencers are paid to promote messages or products. Others do it to gain favor with brands or groups. Either way, their support becomes part of a larger image. This thing is popular. This thing is approved. Followers copy what they see, and the cycle continues. Online platforms encourage this process. Algorithms push content that gets more engagement. If fake engagement is used to boost a post early on, the system spreads it further. The manipulation feeds itself. A video with fake views gets promoted, then receives real views. A product with fake reviews rises in rankings, then gets bought more often. Each step makes the lie stronger. This tactic isn't limited to products or campaigns. It can also shape values and beliefs. A group may want to push a new social norm. They create content that looks like it reflects public opinion. They show fake polls. They quote experts who agree. They highlight extreme cases as if they are common. Over time, people start to feel like they're in the minority. If they disagree, to avoid conflict, they stay quiet or change their view. Think about a situation where someone posts a concern about a new policy. The replies are filled with people saying the concern is foolish or selfish. Some of those replies may come from bots, others may be part of a coordinated response. The person feels isolated. They doubt their own view. They stay quiet the next time. The message that supports the policy spreads without challenge, not because it's true, but because the opposition was drowned out. This method can also work in reverse. If a message is ignored or attacked, people may assume it has no support. A good idea with no likes or shares may be skipped. A wise comment with no replies may be lost. The absence of proof becomes its own message. No one agrees, so it must be wrong. The reality may be that others did agree, but their views were hidden or blocked. Manipulating social proof can affect laws, public health, spending, and even war. If leaders want support for a plan, they might show fake data about public backing. They release staged interviews. They hold events with hand-picked crowds. News outlets show only the cheers, not the questions. Viewers at home see unity. They assume everyone is on board. They don't want to be left out. They go along. This tactic is hard to fight because it works on instinct. People are social. They look to others when unsure. In fast-moving situations, they don't have time to research. They rely on signals, crowd size, tone of voice, number of likes. When those signals are faked, the brain still treats them as real. That makes manipulation easy, especially when most people don't know it's happening. Even small-scale examples show the effect. A restaurant with a full parking lot draws more diners, even if most of the cars belong to employees. A book labeled bestseller gets more attention, even if the sales were bought in bulk by the publisher. A post that says everyone's talking about this gets clicks, even if no one is. These tricks shift behavior by shaping what people think others believe. To see through this, people must slow down. They need to ask where the proof comes from. Who benefits if this idea seems popular? Are the voices real, or are they copied and pasted? Is the crowd natural, or was it brought in? Asking these questions doesn't always give clear answers, but it breaks the automatic response. It gives space to think instead of just follow. Social proof should reflect real agreement, not manufactured support. When that line is crossed, the truth gets lost. People make choices based on a picture that someone else built, not on facts, not on values, but on what they were shown. That's why social proof manipulation works so well, and that's why it's used so often. Authority conditioning is the process of teaching people to accept and obey figures who appear to hold power. This can include people in uniforms, lab coats, official roles, or with academic or government titles. The key part of this method is that people respond to the appearance of authority, not the content of what is said. They trust the source without checking the logic, evidence, or outcome. From a young age, people are taught to listen to authority. In school, children are told to follow the teacher. At home, parents speak in firm tones. In public, police and security guards give orders. These lessons are repeated in daily life until they become automatic. The person in charge gives instructions, others follow. Questioning is not part of the system. Obedience is seen as the right path. The famous Milgram experiment in the 1960s showed how strong this conditioning can be. In the study, people were told to give what they believed were electric shocks to another person. The shocks increased in strength with each wrong answer. Many participants kept going, even when they thought they were causing real harm. Why? Because a man in a lab coat told them to continue. The lab coat gave the impression of authority. It made the participants ignore their own judgment. They handed over responsibility to the figure, who looked like he knew what he was doing. This shows how authority conditioning works. It separates thought from action. A person may feel unsure, but still obey. They may sense harm, but do nothing. They may believe something is wrong, but stay silent. The presence of a uniform or title shuts down the questioning part of the mind. The person no longer sees a fellow human. They see a role, and that role must be respected. This is reinforced in media. Movies and shows often present authority figures as wise, calm, and in control. The doctor gives a perfect diagnosis. The officer restores peace. The judge brings justice. These images repeat the same message. Trust the person in charge. Don't ask too many questions. Let them lead. In news coverage, experts are often brought in to explain complex issues. These experts wear suits, carry degrees, or hold key positions. Their tone is firm. Their language sounds precise. The audience takes their word as truth, even if the ideas are flawed. The format gives weight to the speaker, not the information. Once that person is labeled as an expert, their views become accepted without much resistance. During crises, this conditioning becomes even stronger. In a health emergency, people listen to medical officials. In a security scare, they look to law enforcement. Leaders hold press briefings with flags and formal settings. These visuals are not just for communication. They are used to build authority. The viewer sees the symbols of power and feels the need to follow instructions. The facts may be unclear, but the sense of trust comes from the setting and tone. This can lead to mistakes. If the authority figure is wrong, the mistake spreads, but few people will speak out because they assume someone else must know more. They forget to check the idea. They focus on the person delivering it. The lab coat, badge, or title becomes the proof. In advertising, this method is used often. A man in a white coat says a toothpaste is the best. A woman in scrubs promotes a new supplement. The goal is not science, it's trust. The outfit triggers a learned response. The viewer thinks they must know what they're talking about. The message gets accepted, not because it makes sense, but because it comes from the right figure. In schools, authority conditioning shapes future behavior. Students are told to listen, repeat, and not challenge the system. Grades reward obedience more than insight. Those who ask too many questions may be labeled difficult. Over time, students learn to stay quiet around authority. This carries into adult life. At work, employees may follow bad orders, rather than risk being seen as insubordinate. The same pattern repeats. The higher rank speaks, others follow. In the courtroom, a person in a robe carries weight. The language used, Your Honor, objection sustained, adds formality. The room design places the judge above others. All these parts work together to build trust in the role. The person sitting in that seat may be fair or flawed, but the setting teaches people to accept their word. Religious settings also rely on this. A preacher, rabbi, or imam may wear special clothes or speak in a certain way. Followers are taught to trust the person because of their role. Questioning the message can be seen as a lack of faith. The leader may be sincere, but the structure discourages doubt. Authority is built into the system, even outside formal roles. People learn to read signs of authority. Tone of voice, posture, vocabulary, all can signal power. A person who speaks with confidence and uses complex terms may be believed more, even if they're wrong. People mistake style for substance. They surrender their own judgment because the speaker sounds like they know. This pattern is dangerous when used by those who want control. A government may put forward a spokesperson with a calm voice and sharp suit. The person explains a new rule or policy. The content may be harmful, but the delivery feels safe. Viewers feel less need to question. They assume the policy must be for the best. The result is blind consent. Authority conditioning can also be enforced through punishment. If a person disobeys, they may face shame, fines, or arrest. Others see what happens and fall in line. Over time, the cost of doubt feels too high. People obey to avoid trouble, not because they believe. The system stays intact because no one wants to stand out. This method becomes more effective in groups. In a crowd, people look to those who seem in charge. If one person obeys, others follow. A figure in uniform speaks, and the group quiets. The message spreads without challenge. The group's behavior becomes a kind of proof. If everyone else is following, it must be right. Digital tools can also use authority cues. A website may show badges, stars, or expert endorsements. A video may open with formal music and a logo. These touches create a sense of trust before the content even begins. Viewers lower their guard. They accept what comes next, even if it should be questioned. To resist authority conditioning, a person must pause and think. Ask whether the message makes sense. Look past the uniform. Examine the facts, not the role. Respect for knowledge is not the same as blind trust. A title or outfit should not replace reason. True authority invites questions. False authority shuts them down. Operant conditioning is a method used to shape behavior by linking actions to outcomes. When a behavior leads to a reward, people tend to repeat it. When it leads to a punishment, they avoid it. This form of training works well because it doesn't require direct commands. Instead, people learn through experience what is safe and what is risky. Over time, they adjust their behavior to avoid loss and gain approval. In modern systems, the rewards and punishments are often subtle. This makes the conditioning harder to detect and more effective. The concept was first studied in depth by psychologist B.F. Skinner. He showed that animals, like rats or pigeons, could be trained to press a lever or perform a task if they received a reward afterward. If pressing the lever gave them food, they pressed it more. If pressing the lever led to a shock, they avoided it. Humans respond in much the same way. The only difference is that the rewards and punishments are more complex. Social approval is one of the most powerful tools used in this system. When someone shares a popular opinion, they may receive likes, praise, or support. When they say something unpopular, even if it is reasonable, they may face silence, sarcasm, or rejection. Over time, people learn to say what others want to hear. They adjust their views, not because they believe something new, but because they want to avoid isolation. The brain reads disapproval as a kind of pain. The fear of being left out drives people to conform. At work, job security can be used as a form of control. An employee who speaks in support of company goals may receive better reviews, promotions, or invitations to meetings. Another employee who questions policies may find their hours cut, their work criticized, or their position at risk. Nothing needs to be said directly. The message is clear: support brings safety, dissent brings loss. In this way, the system teaches people to follow, not because they agree, but because they need the job. Censorship is another form of punishment. When someone shares an idea that goes against the approved view, their content may be removed, their account flagged, or their reach reduced. They may not be banned outright. Instead, they are made harder to find. Their voice fades while others grow louder. This kind of response doesn't stop them from speaking, but it limits who hears them. Over time, they may give up, not because they were proven wrong, but because the cost of speaking became too high. On the flip side, the system rewards those who repeat accepted ideas. Their content is shared more widely. Their name appears in recommended lists. Their audience grows. This feels like success, but it often depends less on the strength of their ideas and more on how well they match the approved narrative. They are rewarded for staying inside the lines. They may not even notice they've changed. The growth feels natural, but it came from silent approval. Children experience operant conditioning in school. A student who raises their hand and gives the right answer gets praise. A student who questions the lesson or the teacher's view may be labeled disruptive. Grades reflect more than knowledge. They reflect obedience to the system. Students learn to play the game. They repeat what is expected. They avoid what brings conflict. The school may claim to teach critical thinking, but the structure rewards repetition over doubt. This training continues in higher education. Professors often favor students who support the dominant view in a field. Those who challenge it may receive lower marks or less attention. Some topics are seen as off-limits. A student may avoid exploring them, not because the ideas lack value, but because they don't want to face the cost. The message is simple: challenge less, succeed more. The same dynamic appears in public life. A person who aligns with the values of the dominant culture is praised as thoughtful, informed, or compassionate. A person who holds a different view may be called harmful, backward, or dangerous. These labels don't need to be explained. They serve as cues, others hear them, and back away. The person learns the lesson. Silence is safer, even silence can be trained. In group settings, people often hold back views that might cause conflict. If someone stays quiet during a tense moment, they avoid blame. If they speak out and face anger, they learn to hold their tongue next time. This quiet pressure shapes the whole group. The range of acceptable speech gets smaller. Everyone adjusts. No rules were written, no laws were passed, but the shift is real. Technology strengthens this effect. Apps and platforms track behavior. If a user likes certain content, more of that type appears. If they ignore or reject it, the feed adjusts. This creates a feedback loop. Users are rewarded with comfort and agreement. If they reach outside that loop, they face discomfort or confusion. They return to what feels good. The platform trains them without saying a word. In personal life, the same pattern applies. A person who shows certain traits, politeness, agreement, enthusiasm, gets more attention and support. A person who seems negative, serious, or skeptical may be avoided. Over time, people learn to wear a mask. They shape their personality to match what others reward. They lose track of who they are. The training becomes their identity. Operant conditioning is powerful because it works without clear force. People think they are choosing. They think they are acting freely, but their choices were shaped by a history of feedback. They are chasing rewards and avoiding pain. The behavior becomes natural. The memory of the training fades, but the effects remain. This method is hard to resist. It builds slowly. It hides in daily life. A raised eyebrow, a quiet room, a lost opportunity. Each moment leaves a mark. The system does not need to punish with violence. It only needs to guide attention, shape rewards, and let the person train themselves. In the end, people obey not because they were forced, but because it felt safer to follow. Gaslighting is a method used to make someone question their own memory, judgment, or sense of reality. The goal is control. When a person no longer trusts their own mind, they become easier to direct. They start to rely on someone else to tell them what is true. Over time, they lose confidence in what they see, hear, or feel. This kind of manipulation can happen in personal relationships, at work, in institutions, or through media. The term comes from a play and film, where a man slowly convinces his wife that she is going insane. He dims the lights in the house, then denies it when she notices. He hides things, then accuses her of losing them. Each small lie chips away at her trust in herself. That pattern, repeated again and again, breaks her sense of what is real. In real life, gaslighting can begin with something small. A person might say, "You're too sensitive," after saying something hurtful. The target feels pain, but the response turns the issue back on them. Over time, they may stop reacting, even when they are mistreated. They start to think their feelings are wrong. Another form is denial of clear facts. A boss might promise a raise, then later say, "I never said that." If the employee pushes back, the boss adds, "Maybe you misunderstood, or you're remembering it wrong." The employee begins to doubt their memory. Even with notes or emails, they may start to think they made a mistake. The power shifts. The boss controls the story. Gaslighting often works best when done over time. One denial may not shake a person's trust, but repeated challenges to memory, logic, or emotion begin to wear them down. The gaslighter stays calm while the target grows confused. That contrast adds pressure. The more the target tries to hold on to truth, the more they are told they're overreacting, imagining things, or acting unstable. In relationships, this tactic can make someone feel isolated. A partner may say things like, "No one else would put up with you," or "Your friends think you're crazy." They may also hide conversations, change plans, or alter past events, then insist they're right. The target, feeling alone and unsure, starts to believe they are the problem. They become dependent on the gaslighter to explain what's real and what's not. In groups or institutions, gaslighting can be used to silence dissent. A person raises a concern. The group responds with, "That's not how we remember it," or "You must be misinformed." The person may have facts, but they're treated as unreliable. If enough people agree with the false story, the pressure builds. The target may back down, not because they're wrong, but because they feel outnumbered. In media, gaslighting can appear when coverage ignores facts, rewrites past events, or mocks people who remember things differently. A news outlet might claim a policy was never enforced, even though records exist. They may downplay major events or dismiss eyewitnesses. The audience, hearing one version of truth on repeat, may begin to question their own knowledge. They wonder if they misread, misheard, or misunderstood. This tactic also appears in medical or legal settings. A patient reports symptoms and is told, "It's all in your head." A person raises legal concerns and hears, "You're just being paranoid." These responses do not address the issue. They shift blame to the person's mind. The target, unsure of their own senses, may stop speaking out. Gaslighting often includes projection. The person doing it accuses the target of what they themselves are doing. If the gaslighter lies, they may say, "You're the one who always lies." If they act out, they say, "You're unstable." The target, caught in defense mode, misses the reversal. They try to prove themselves right instead of calling out the tactic. Some gaslighters do this on purpose. They know the power of confusion and use it to gain control. Others may not see it as a tactic. They twist facts to avoid blame or responsibility. Either way, the effect is the same. The target loses trust in their own thinking. Gaslighting can affect memory over time. If someone is told often enough that their version of events is false, their brain may begin to adapt. They may remember things differently, or forget entirely. The mind, trying to reduce stress, may rewrite history to match what it hears. This does not mean the original memory was wrong. It means the repeated pressure changed the way the brain held onto it. A person under long-term gaslighting may begin to doubt everything. They question what they feel, what they know, and what they see. They apologize for things that are not their fault. They avoid conflict to keep the peace. They grow anxious, depressed, or withdrawn. These changes are not caused by weakness. They are signs of mental strain from being made to doubt reality. Recovery starts when the person begins to name what's happening, saying, "This doesn't match what I saw," or "That's not what you said last time." Breaks the cycle. The gaslighter may push back harder at first, but each moment of clarity helps rebuild the person's confidence. Keeping records can help. Writing things down, saving messages, or talking to others can give a person solid ground. It's easier to hold on to truth when there is proof to go back to. Trusted allies also make a difference. When someone outside the situation says, "That sounds wrong," it helps the target trust their own thoughts again. Gaslighting is not always loud. It can come in calm tones, clever jokes, or gentle corrections. But its goal is always the same: to take control by making someone doubt their own mind. When people don't trust themselves, they stop asking questions. They become easier to manage. That is why gaslighting is so often used where control is the goal, not truth, not growth, not care, but control. Emotional contagion is the spread of emotion through a group of people. One person's feelings can trigger the same feelings in others. When this happens on a large scale, it can change how people think and act. It's not based on facts or logic. It's a reaction. The emotion takes over before the mind can process what's going on. This effect can be used to guide people towards specific choices, attitudes, or behaviors, often without them knowing it. People pick up emotion through tone of voice, facial expression, body movement, and language. When one person smiles, others tend to smile. When someone cries, others feel sadness. When a crowd cheers, people join in, even if they don't fully understand why. The brain is wired to mirror what it sees. This is a basic part of being human. It helps people connect, but it also makes them vulnerable to influence. In large groups, emotional contagion becomes even stronger. Think of a concert, a sports event, or a protest. A single mood can sweep across thousands of people in seconds. If the group is joyful, that energy lifts everyone. If the group is angry or afraid, that feeling spreads just as fast. The individual stops thinking independently. They follow the mood of the group. This shift can happen in minutes. It bypasses thought and goes straight to action. This response is natural, but it can be used on purpose. Leaders, media outlets, and organizations often use emotional contagion to shape public behavior. They trigger mass feelings, then direct people toward a specific goal. They don't have to lie or give orders. They only need to create the right emotional state. Once that state takes hold, people become more open to suggestion. They stop asking hard questions. They just want to act, connect, or escape the feeling. Fear is one of the most powerful emotions used this way. During a crisis, fear spreads quickly. One report about danger can trigger a wave of panic. News stations play the same footage across every channel. Social media repeats the warnings. Images show people in masks, sirens, empty shelves, or closed borders. The mood turns tense. Even those who are calm begin to feel unsure. They watch others react and feel the need to do the same. This creates a loop. Fear spreads from person to person. Soon the group is united, not by facts but by shared emotion. At that point, leaders step in with a message. They say, here's what to do, here's who to trust, here's what comes next. People follow, not because they agree with the plan, but because the emotion is too strong to ignore. Action feels better than confusion. Order feels better than chaos. The message becomes a kind of relief. It gives people something to hold onto in a storm of feeling. Grief can work the same way. When a tragic event happens, the sadness pulls people together. Public mourning becomes a ritual. News reports focus on loss. Social media fills with shared memories and sorrow. The public mood becomes heavy. In that space, people want to connect. They want meaning. They are open to messages that offer comfort, direction, or unity. If a new law is proposed in honor of those lost, few will argue. If a policy shifts to make sure this never happens again, many will support it without asking what it changes. The grief lowers the guard. It makes space for agreement without debate. Celebration can also carry this effect. When a leader wins, a team succeeds, or a movement gains ground, the joy spreads. People gather, cheer, and repeat key phrases. The energy builds on itself. In that state, criticism feels out of place. Anyone who questions the moment may be pushed aside or called negative. The mood doesn't allow for doubt. It rewards those who join in. It leaves behind those who pause. This can be used to push through fast decisions. If the crowd is happy, they won't slow down to ask what happens next. Media often plays a large role in shaping these waves. By choosing which stories to tell and how to tell them, they guide emotion. A camera angle can make a moment feel intimate or distant. Music under a video can build tension or peace. A headline can stir outrage or calm. Each detail adds to the mood. When every outlet uses the same mood, the effect is strong. Viewers feel the emotion even before they understand the facts. This is not always done with clear intent. Sometimes the spread of emotion is just part of the news cycle. But in other cases, the timing, tone, and focus are carefully planned. A campaign might release a video showing victims to stir sympathy. A government might hold a press event with flags, music, and speeches to build hope or unity. The message matters less than the mood it creates. Once the feeling is there, the people will often follow the next steps without resistance. Social media makes this easier. A post with strong emotion spreads faster than one with neutral facts. A video showing tears or anger gets more clicks. Algorithms boost content that triggers reactions. Users share posts that match their mood. A few strong messages can shift the tone of an entire platform. The feed becomes full of the same feeling. The user absorbs that feeling just by scrolling. Even language changes in these moments. Words become charged, phrases repeat, slogans appear and spread. They give people a way to show they belong. Saying the phrase becomes part of the mood. It shows support. It replaces thought with rhythm. We stand together, never again. You're either with us or against us. These lines carry power, not because of what they say, but because of how they feel. This method works best when people are already unsure. In times of stress, confusion, or loss, people look to others for cues. They read the room. They copy what they see. They want to feel safe, connected, and certain. If the group seems afraid, they become afraid. If the group celebrates, they join in. This is not weakness. It's human nature. But when that nature is used to guide behavior without thought, it becomes a tool of control. An emotional contagion shapes action more than facts. A crowd that feels united will defend a cause, even if they don't fully understand it. A crowd that feels fear will support control, even if it limits freedom. A crowd that feels joy will accept change, even if it happens too fast to question. In each case, the emotion does the work. The logic comes later, if at all. The person believes they chose freely, but in truth the feeling made the choice for them. Controlled opposition is a tactic where the same power that pushes a message also sets up the people who appear to oppose it. These fake adversaries look like critics or rebels, but they work to serve the same goal as the original force. By controlling both sides of a debate, the system shapes public opinion, blocks true resistance, and protects its own interests. This method works by giving people the illusion of choice. When people feel frustrated, they look for a group, leader, or voice that speaks their anger. If the system can offer a pre-approved outlet, the energy of real dissent is captured and redirected. The public feels like they've joined a fight against power, but the fight is staged, the rules are set, the boundaries are fixed, the system stays safe. A simple example comes from politics. A government may face public unrest over new laws. To calm the situation, a party or figure rises up and speaks the language of protest. They criticize policies, call for reform, and draw large support. But behind closed doors, they are funded, advised, or at least tolerated by the same people in power. They act as a pressure valve. They absorb the energy of real opposition and keep it within a safe zone. The laws may change in name, but the core structure remains. Media plays a key role in this setup. A controlled opposition figure receives attention, interviews, and headlines. Their image is carefully shaped. They appear bold, outspoken, and honest. Viewers begin to trust them. But when it matters most, when the system is at risk, these figures step back, water down their message, or turn the blame toward easy targets. They stay within the limits. They guide their followers back to the acceptable range of thought. This method can also appear in protest movements. A real grassroots group may begin with clear goals, but as the group grows, a new leader shows up. They speak well, they offer structure, they promise results. Soon the movement shifts. Meetings are managed, signs are pre-printed, the message becomes vague, the tactics become soft. Behind the scenes, donors, consultants, or agencies begin to guide the tone. The original energy fades, real action stops. Controlled opposition doesn't need to be fully fake. It works best when it includes some truth. A voice may say real things, expose real issues, or challenge real problems. That makes them believable, but they stop short of exposing the full system. They point to a symptom, not the root. They offer reform, not rejection. Their role is to keep the debate narrow, to make sure the public never leaves the path laid out for them. This tactic has a long history. In empires, kings would allow certain advisors to act as critics. These figures would speak for the people, then guide them back to loyalty. In revolutions, spies were placed among the rebels to lead them into traps or delay their plans. In modern times, intelligence agencies have supported groups that looked like enemies but were easy to manage. The goal stays the same: control the threat by controlling the voice of the threat. Online, this method appears in influencers and activists who speak to large crowds but never take clear risks. They may share strong opinions, but only about issues that are already safe to criticize. They may attack certain figures while ignoring the larger systems behind them. They may raise funds, sell products or grow followings without facing the same blocks, bans or threats that others face. The contrast is the clue. Real dissent often faces silence or punishment. Controlled opposition is allowed to grow. Sometimes the role of controlled opposition is to make real opposition look foolish. A fake group may adopt extreme views, strange symbols, or wild behavior. They take over the message. The public sees them and turns away. They say, "If that's what dissent looks like, I want no part of it." The original cause becomes discredited. The energy is scattered. The system wins without a fight. This method also works by keeping people busy. A controlled opposition may call for endless discussion, meetings or debates. They may focus on small wins or symbolic gestures. The followers feel active but achieve little. Their energy is spent. Their attention is trapped. They don't notice that the real problem continues. Controlled opposition can exist in any field: politics, media, health, science, religion or art. In each case, the figure appears as an outsider, but plays by the insider's rules. They may say, "I'm here to expose the truth," while repeating the same stories. They may claim to fight for freedom while pushing for limits. The public, tired and confused, clings to the loudest voice. They believe they've found the answer. They don't see the cage. This method depends on one thing: the public's need for leadership. When people feel lost, they seek direction. They want someone who seems strong, informed and brave. If the system can provide that figure first, it can lead them anywhere. They will follow, not because they were forced, but because they chose a path laid out for them. This is why critical thinking matters. People must ask who gains if this voice leads the opposition. Does the leader take risks, or do they stay protected? Do their actions match their words? Do they call for surface changes, or deep change? Who funds them? Who platforms them? Who repeats their message? A person doesn't need to reject every voice to stay free, but they must stay alert. They must know that not every loud voice is real. Some were built to catch the ear and calm the storm. They promise change, but only the kind that leaves the system intact. Their job is not to win, but to keep others from winning. Controlled opposition looks like hope, but works as a trap. When both sides are managed, there is no real fight, only theater. The only way out is to look beyond the stage and ask who built it. Groupthink engineering is the process of shaping a group so that agreement matters more than truth. In this setup, people are pushed to match the views, tone, and behavior of the majority. Questioning is seen as a threat. Disagreement is framed as disloyal. The goal is to create the feeling of unity, even if it means shutting down individual thought. This starts with pressure to fit in. In most groups, people want to feel accepted. They want to belong, that's normal. But when the group starts to value harmony over accuracy, it stops thinking clearly. One person says something that sounds right. Others nod. The rest follow. Soon, the group believes they all agree, even if some members feel unsure. No one wants to be the one who ruins the mood or holds things back. In a workplace, this might look like a team meeting where a new policy is introduced. A few people speak up in support. Others stay quiet, even if they have concerns. They don't want to sound negative. They don't want to be seen as difficult. So they go along. The policy moves forward. Weeks later, it causes problems that no one saw, or rather no one said out loud. The silence felt safe in the moment, but it came at a cost. Groupthink doesn't mean everyone believes the same thing. It means they act as if they do. The difference matters. People may have doubts, but if the space doesn't allow those doubts, they stay buried. Over time, people stop even forming them. They train themselves to agree. They tell themselves it's easier, or smarter, or more loyal. They replace thinking with following. Leaders sometimes encourage this on purpose. They might say, "We're all on the same page," even before the group has spoken. This sets a frame. Anyone who raises a concern now seems off track. If the leader adds, "Let's not waste time on debate," that locks it in. The group now hears that questioning is the problem, not the idea itself. In schools, students may be graded not just on performance, but on how well they contribute to group work. This can mean how well they agree with the group. A student who thinks differently might be told to get with the program. They're not corrected on facts, they're corrected on tone. Over time, students learn that safety comes from matching the group, not from speaking the truth. Social media adds another layer. A post that fits the group's beliefs gets likes, shares, and praise. A post that asks hard questions may be ignored or attacked. The platform rewards the first kind of post, it punishes the second. This creates a feedback loop. People learn what kinds of messages get approval. They adjust. They stop sharing doubts. They start repeating what works. Groupthink also shows up in activism. A cause may begin with strong values and open ideas, but as it grows, the group tightens. New members are taught the right language, the right tone, and the right way to speak about the issue. Those who slip or ask the wrong question may be corrected, shamed, or removed. The movement becomes more about unity than progress. Energy is spent on control instead of ideas. In national politics, groupthink can take the form of slogans. Phrases like "we stand together" or "now is not the time to divide" are used to shut down debate. If someone raises concerns, they are told they're hurting the cause. They're told to wait, to trust, to stop being a distraction. The message isn't "you're wrong." The message is "you don't belong." That's more powerful. It turns doubt into exile. In family or religious settings, groupthink may be passed off as tradition. "We've always done it this way" becomes a wall against questions. A child who asks why is told to stop being rude. A member who changes their view is called lost. The group closes ranks. The rules are protected. The truth is left behind. Groupthink engineering doesn't just happen by chance. It can be designed. A company may train its staff with values like team first or one voice. These sound harmless, but they can be used to block feedback, limit innovation, or hide failure. If one person sees a problem, but the group says everything is fine, that person may say nothing. They may not want to seem disloyal. The effects of groupthink can be serious. In government, it can lead to bad policies. Officials agree too fast. No one wants to look weak. No one wants to slow things down. Mistakes get passed off as bold action. Later, when things go wrong, no one takes the blame. Everyone was just following along. In business, groupthink can lead to products that fail. The team may skip testing or reject outside views. They trust the group's excitement more than outside data. They may even silence staff who bring up risk. The launch goes forward. The damage follows. The warning signs were there, but they were ignored in the name of unity. In law enforcement or the military, groupthink can block ethics. Officers may see a colleague cross the line, but say nothing. The message is clear: loyalty first. Speaking out means betrayal. Over time, even good people stay silent. They believe they're keeping the group strong, but the silence protects the worst actions. Groupthink feels good in the moment. It removes conflict. It gives a sense of team spirit. It makes people feel safe. But that safety is shallow. It depends on silence, fear, and pressure. It teaches people to look away, to agree when they shouldn't, to speak only when told. It removes the tools that protect truth, curiosity, honesty, and doubt. To build groupthink, a system must reward agreement and punish difference. It must make sure every voice sounds the same. It must hide the cost of silence and present it as virtue. It must turn discomfort into threat and turn the group into a shelter from thought. That's how it works. Not with force, not with facts, with fear of being left out. That's enough to shape a crowd. That's enough to stop the truth. Sleep cycle disruption is the method of interfering with natural sleep patterns to reduce mental clarity and increase suggestibility. When a person does not get enough quality sleep, especially deep sleep, their brain cannot process information well. Over time, this leads to fatigue, poor judgment, and emotional instability. In this condition, people are less likely to question ideas, challenge authority, or think critically. They become easier to guide, influence, or control. Sleep works in cycles. Each night, the brain moves through stages that include light sleep, deep sleep, and REM sleep. Deep sleep is the phase where the body repairs itself and the brain clears out waste. It also plays a key role in memory, learning, and emotional regulation. Without enough deep sleep, a person may feel foggy, irritated, or easily overwhelmed. They may rely more on others to help them think clearly. Disrupting sleep can happen in many ways. Some are accidental, others are planned. Either way, the result is the same. The brain does not fully recover. The person may still sleep, but the quality of that sleep is low. They wake up tired. They stay in a constant state of low alertness. They become passive and more open to suggestion. Entertainment plays a large role in this process. Many people use screens late at night. Phones, computers, and televisions emit blue light, which tells the brain to stay awake. Even if a person turns off the device, the brain remains active. It takes time to calm down. Watching fast-paced shows or emotional content before bed increases this effect. The viewer may feel tired, but their mind keeps running. Sleep comes late, and deep sleep is reduced. Streaming platforms use this to keep people engaged. They design shows that end with suspense. The next episode starts automatically. The viewer stays up longer than planned. This delay becomes a habit. They go to bed late, wake up early, and repeat the pattern. Over time, their thinking slows, their mood drops. But they don't always connect these changes to lost sleep. Work schedules also interfere with sleep. Many jobs demand early starts and long hours. People stay up late to unwind, then wake early for meetings or tasks. Shift work creates even more strain. When someone works nights or rotates shifts, their sleep rhythm breaks. The brain cannot settle into a steady cycle. Even on days off, sleep remains light or scattered. The person lives in a state of permanent exhaustion. Stress is another major cause. When people feel unsafe or overwhelmed, the body stays alert. This is part of the fight or flight response. Hormones like cortisol rise, heart rate increases. Even if a person lies down, their body stays tense. They may fall asleep, but not reach deep rest. The sleep may be filled with light dreams, interruptions, or frequent waking. Each night adds to the problem. They wake up tired, but must keep going. This makes stress worse, which makes sleep harder. The cycle continues. News and media can feed this stress. Late night alerts, breaking news, or constant coverage of danger create a sense of urgency. The brain believes something bad may happen soon. It resists rest. Even if the person wants to sleep, the feeling of tension keeps the mind active. They scroll through updates, check the time, or replay events in their head. The hours pass. Sleep gets shorter. The next day, they are slower to think and easier to direct. Over time, this leads to a state of learned helplessness. The person feels drained, but keeps going. They stop trying to fix the problem. They accept fatigue as normal. They listen more to outside voices because their own thoughts feel weak or jumbled. They stop pushing back against pressure. They agree with suggestions, not because they believe, but because it takes less effort than thinking. In some cases, sleep disruption can be used on purpose. Military training often uses broken sleep to increase control. New recruits are woken during the night, given tasks at odd hours, or allowed only short rest. This breaks their rhythm. It creates dependence on the system. In that state, they are more open to commands. They are too tired to argue. The training shapes their behavior without resistance. Cult groups have used similar tactics. Members are kept busy from early morning until late at night. Meetings, tasks, and rituals fill every hour. Sleep is seen as weakness. Rest is discouraged. The person becomes exhausted, then molded. They accept ideas that would have seemed strange before. Their guard is down. Their mind is soft. The group fills the gap. Parents with newborns may face sleep disruption too. They often report feeling confused, moody, or detached. Even though the cause is clear, the effect is still strong. The brain without sleep does not work the same. When this happens over weeks or months, decision-making breaks down. The person may struggle to form complete thoughts, remember facts, or speak clearly. They rely more on others. They may feel like a different version of themselves. Digital platforms also track when users are online. They may push content during late hours. Notifications, messages, or updates can appear when the user is most likely to be tired. This keeps them engaged, but it also keeps them from sleeping deeply. The constant pull of new content, mixed with fatigue, leads to passive scrolling. The user is present but not fully alert. In that state, they are more likely to accept what they see without question. Marketing teams may schedule ads during late night hours for this reason. A tired viewer may not analyze the message. They may respond to mood, tone, or rhythm instead of logic. The sale is made, not through argument, but through timing. The window between wake and sleep becomes a place for influence. Over time, sleep cycle disruption affects whole groups. If many people in a society stay up late, rise early, and live with stress, they become easier to influence. They may not resist bad ideas. They may not notice changes in law or policy. They may not vote, protest, or speak up. They are too tired. They want comfort, not clarity. They accept soft control because it feels better than the effort of pushing back. Sleep is not just rest. It is defense. It clears the mind, balances the mood, and sharpens thinking. When that process is broken, the person loses more than energy. They lose the ability to think clearly. The system can still run, but it runs on lower power. In that state, outside voices can take over. The mind, once sharp, becomes quiet. The person obeys, not from belief, but from fatigue. Symbolic programming is the use of symbols to influence people without using words. These symbols often come from ancient cultures, religions, or deep patterns in human psychology. The goal is to trigger feelings or ideas below the surface of awareness. The viewer may not notice the symbol or know what it means, but the image can still shape their thoughts, actions, or emotional state. A symbol works by linking something seen with something felt. For example, a triangle pointing upward may feel strong or masculine. A triangle pointing downward may feel soft or feminine. A circle often suggests unity or wholeness. A square may feel stable or solid. These shapes are simple, but they carry emotional weight. The mind reacts before the person understands why. Corporations use these shapes in their logos. A bank might choose a square to suggest trust and security. A tech company may use a circle or a curve to suggest openness or flow. The shapes are not random. They are tested to match the mood the company wants to project. The viewer may not think about it. They see the shape and feel a certain way. The symbol guides the response without words. Color adds to the effect. Red can signal danger or passion. Blue often brings calm or authority. Black may feel serious or elite. Gold can suggest power or value. Each color carries a tone that pairs with the shape. A sharp red triangle feels different than a soft blue circle. Designers combine color and shape to direct the viewer's mind. Symbols don't have to be new. Many come from old systems. Ancient cultures used symbols to represent gods, forces of nature, or laws of the universe. These include the sun, the eye, the serpent, the tree, the spiral, and the cross. These images appear again and again in religion, myth, and art. They seem to reach beyond time. That's why they still work today. The mind connects to them without needing to study their meaning. One common symbol is the all-seeing eye. It shows up on money, in films, and in company logos. The image suggests vision, power, and control. It can make the viewer feel watched or guided. Another is the pyramid. It suggests order, hierarchy, or a goal to reach. It points upward, towards something greater. When combined, the pyramid and the eye send a clear message: someone above sees all. The viewer may not notice, but the feeling remains. Architecture uses symbols too. Large columns recall ancient temples. They suggest strength and tradition. Domes can suggest heaven or wholeness. Sharp lines may create a sense of precision or control. Open spaces may suggest freedom. Closed spaces may feel strict or private. Builders use these choices to shape how people feel inside a space. Public buildings often borrow from religious designs. Courthouses may look like temples. Government offices may include pillars, arches, or domes. These details are not just decorative, they create a sense of authority. A person walking into the building feels a shift. They lower their voice. They act with caution. The space tells them how to behave without a word being said. Symbolic programming also works in film and music. A character may wear a certain color to show loyalty, power, or danger. A scene may use lighting and shape to suggest death, rebirth, or judgment. A story may include hidden references to myth, ritual, or archetype. These tools reach the viewer on a deep level. The story feels important, even if the viewer doesn't know why. Music videos often use symbols tied to control, power, or transformation. A pop star may wear horns, wings, or halos. The set may look like a temple, a throne, or a cage. The lyrics may repeat simple lines while the visuals flash symbols in the background. The viewer takes in the message as entertainment, but the brain stores more than the beat. It keeps the images too. Advertising uses this method to sell products. A car may be placed beside a mountain, a wolf, or a flame. A perfume ad may show a snake, a rose, or a locked door. These symbols stir feeling. The viewer links the product to strength, mystery, or desire. The symbols don't explain, they suggest. That's the power of symbolic programming. It works without words. Ritual is another way symbols enter daily life. A handshake, a flag, a uniform, or a salute carries more than a function. It shows belonging, respect, or rank. Schools, armies, and workplaces use these signals to mark roles and values. Over time, people respond to the symbols without thinking. The badge means follow. The robe means listen. The ring means power. Children are trained in symbols early. Storybooks use colors, shapes, and icons to show good and evil. Cartoons repeat certain signs to show who is strong, weak, wise, or wicked. These patterns shape how children see the world. The sun means hope. The dark forest means fear. The crown means rule. Later they carry these feelings into adult life without knowing where they started. Some symbols divide people into groups. Flags, team logos, and religious signs all mark identity. They tell who is us and who is them. This can build pride or lead to conflict. When emotions attach to symbols, people may fight over them, even when they don't know what they mean. The symbol becomes more than a sign, it becomes sacred. Touching it feels like touching belief itself, because symbols work below awareness. They can be used for good or harm. A wise teacher may use them to pass on deep truths. A manipulative leader may use them to control. The effect depends on the goal, but the method is the same. Show a shape, repeat it, attach a feeling. Let the symbol speak while the mind stays quiet. Once a symbol enters the mind, it can act like a trigger. A person may see it again in a new setting and feel the old emotion return. This can guide choices. It can shape mood. It can nudge someone toward trust, fear, pride, or shame. The symbol does not need to explain. Its power is in suggestion. Symbolic programming works because the human brain looks for meaning. It fills in gaps. It seeks patterns. When a symbol is simple, strong, and repeated, it becomes part of how the brain sees the world. That symbol can then shape what a person notices, feels, or believes, all without a single word. Echo chambers form when people only see, hear, and share ideas that match what they already believe. This usually happens on social media, in search results, or in digital communities. When someone's feed is full of content that agrees with their views, they feel supported, but they also stop hearing different opinions. Over time, this shapes how they see the world. It reinforces their bias and makes them less likely to question their own thoughts. Social media platforms build these environments through algorithms. These systems track what users like, share, or comment on. Then they show more of that kind of content. The goal is to keep users engaged. If someone likes videos about a certain political view, the algorithm will push more videos that match that view. If someone often clicks on health tips, the platform will flood them with similar tips. This seems helpful at first, but it narrows the person's world. Imagine someone follows a few accounts that talk about food safety. They click on posts that question additives in packaged snacks. Soon their feed is filled with warnings about food dyes, sugar, and seed oils. They stop seeing posts that say those additives are safe in small amounts. They start to believe the worst-case stories, not because of solid proof, but because it's all they see. Other views are filtered out. This process happens quietly. The person feels informed, but they're only hearing part of the story. They may think, everyone I follow agrees, or I keep seeing the same point, so it must be right. The truth is, the system is built to show agreement. It's not showing the full picture. The user ends up inside an echo chamber, where their beliefs bounce back to them louder each time. Online groups work the same way. A person joins a forum that supports a certain cause. At first, the group offers information and support, but soon it starts to shape identity. Group members use shared language. They praise people who repeat the group's message. They attack those who disagree, even in small ways. Members learn what to say and what to avoid. The space starts to reward loyalty, not honesty. This shapes how people talk. They avoid questions that might upset others. They stop sharing doubts. They learn that the group does not welcome change. Even if someone disagrees in private, they stay silent. The group now sounds united, but it's not because everyone agrees. It's because no one feels safe to speak. Echo chambers also form in news consumption. A reader picks a favorite news source. Over time, they start to trust it more than others. They stop checking other outlets. If the source leans toward one side of an issue, so does the reader. If the source downplays or ignores a story, the reader may not even hear about it. They live in a narrow frame of events. They might say, "I'm just staying informed," but their view is shaped by what's left out. This makes debates harder when two people talk, but each lives in a different echo chamber. They don't just disagree. They don't even share the same facts. One person may bring up a story the other has never heard. The other may trust a source the first sees as fake. They talk past each other. The gap grows. The argument doesn't resolve, it hardens. Each side sees the other as lost or dishonest. Echo chambers are reinforced by emotion. Content that makes people feel angry, proud, or scared tends to spread faster. A post that says, "They're trying to silence us," will get more clicks than one that says, "Here's another view." The platform notices this. It pushes more emotional content. The user sees it, reacts, and shares it. The cycle repeats. Strong feelings drown out quiet thought. This makes people more sure of themselves, but less accurate. Studies show that people in echo chambers often feel more confident in their views, even when those views are wrong. They trust their group. They trust the content they see every day. They stop checking. They stop asking. They stop listening. This kind of isolation isn't always visible. A person may seem open-minded. They may say they welcome debate, but their sources, their groups, and their digital tools all point in the same direction. They don't even know what they're missing. They think their view is common sense. They forget that other people live in different filters. Even search engines play a role. Two people can type the same question into a search bar and get different results. The engine looks at their past behavior, location, and interests. It builds a profile, then serves results that match it. This means that even neutral tools can trap users in one perspective. The person never sees how much the system shapes their answers. In some cases, echo chambers are built on purpose. A group may create content that only fits one view. They block comments that disagree. They remove posts that question their message. They say it's to protect the group. But the result is the same. Only one voice is heard. The chamber becomes stronger. New members adopt the dominant view without challenge. This environment also affects how people treat others. If someone from outside the chamber disagrees, the response is harsh. The outsider is mocked, blocked, or attacked. The group frames them as ignorant, evil, or brainwashed. This keeps members from listening. It teaches them to defend, not discuss. Over time, the chamber doesn't just shape ideas. It shapes character. In some systems, echo chambers serve power. If people only argue with those on the other side, they stop watching the system above them. They blame each other, not the structure. The energy of disagreement goes nowhere. The system stays in place. People feel active, but nothing changes. The chamber gave them a target. It didn't give them truth. Breaking out of an echo chamber takes effort. A person has to look for voices they disagree with. They have to read with care, not just react. They have to accept that their view may be incomplete. This doesn't mean giving up on values. It means testing them. It means asking harder questions. It means looking for the full picture, not just the part that sounds right. Echo chambers don't force people to stay. They make it easy to remain. They reward loyalty, speed, and agreement. They punish questions, pause, and patience. The person doesn't notice the walls until they try to look outside. By then, the chamber feels like home. The noise sounds like truth. The silence around it feels safe. But comfort is not the same as clarity. The echo repeats, but it does not explain. It only surrounds. It does not teach. It traps. Scarcity and crisis framing is the act of presenting a situation in a way that makes people believe time, resources, or safety are running out. The goal is to trigger fear and urgency. When people feel pressure, they make fast decisions. They act to avoid loss. They accept options they might reject under normal conditions. This method shifts the mind from thinking to reacting. It creates a sense that waiting is dangerous and questioning is risky. Scarcity framing often begins with words like limited, exclusive, or last chance. These words show up in sales, policy, news, and even education. A company may say a price will go up in 24 hours. A government may say a new rule must pass by the end of the week to avoid disaster. A headline might say time is running out to stop a threat. These signals don't give space to think. They give a deadline. This framing works because the human brain reacts more strongly to loss than to gain. People are more afraid of missing out than they are excited about new choices. This is called loss aversion. If a person hears that something good is going away, they feel stress. That stress pushes them to act fast. The question becomes not, is this the right move? But will I lose if I don't act now? The shift is subtle but powerful. Crisis framing adds another layer. It paints a picture of threat, danger, or collapse. The crisis may be health, security, finance, or supply. The message says, things are breaking down. We must respond fast. The tone is urgent. The language is sharp. The choices are narrowed. Often only one option is presented as safe or right. All others are framed as too slow, too weak, or too uncertain. Imagine a city facing a water shortage. Officials say the system could fail within days. News stations repeat that warning. Maps show dry areas. Interviews highlight fear. In this setting, a new water rule is passed. No one reads it closely. It places control in one agency, limits public input, and raises rates. Later, people ask how it passed so fast. But at the time, the crisis left no space for pause. In the marketplace, the same method sells products. An online store may show a countdown timer on a page. It says, only 3 left. It adds, order in the next 5 minutes. These signals are designed to raise stress. The customer rushes to buy. Later, they may realize they didn't need the item, but the moment pushed them to act. Scarcity framing also works in social decisions. A person may hear that a new trend is spreading fast. They're told, don't get left behind. The pressure is not to choose what's best, but to avoid being excluded. The fear is social, not physical. Still, the result is the same. Quick action based on stress. In policy, this framing can be used to limit debate. A leader may say, "We are in a state of emergency, we don't have time for long talks." They offer one path. Anyone who questions it is labeled as reckless or naive. The pressure is not to agree, but to stop asking. The choice is framed as safety or collapse. No middle ground is offered. Media reinforces these frames with images and sound. Sirens, flashing lights, and loud voices trigger alarm. Red banners say breaking news. Graphs show rising numbers. The viewer's body responds with tension. The heart rate rises. The breath shortens. The mind prepares for danger. In that state, messages land harder. The viewer doesn't want answers. They want escape from the stress. Scarcity and crisis also appear in education and work. A student may hear, "This is your last chance to pass." A worker may be told, "If you don't take this shift, there won't be another." These messages push action by tying it to fear. The message isn't "try your best," it's "act now or fall behind." Over time, this builds a habit. The person learns to respond to pressure, not to weigh options. Even in healthcare, this method shows up. A patient may be told, "If you don't start treatment now, your window may close." The fear of decline overrides questions. The patient agrees, not from understanding, but from stress. Later, they may wonder about side effects or alternatives. But the moment was shaped to rush. Scarcity framing can shape belief as well. A speaker may say, "We are losing our values." This suggests something good is being taken. It triggers concern. It pushes people to defend, act, or fight. The loss may not be proven, but the frame makes it feel real. The listener feels urgency, even without evidence. Crisis framing can be used to shape public opinion on war. A nation may say, "We are under threat." The enemy is shown as rising, close, and cruel. The language says, "We must act now." Critics are labeled weak. Those who ask for proof are called disloyal. The result is support for action, not from clarity, but from fear. This method is often hidden inside normal talk. A boss says, "We need everyone on board. No time for second guesses." A parent says, "This is the only way." A friend says, "You have to choose now." These are all soft forms of the same tactic. They limit time and expand risk. They close the door to thought. Scarcity and crisis are not always false. Sometimes resources are limited. Sometimes threats are real, but the framing matters. When fear replaces thought, decisions suffer. People act fast and regret later. They accept terms they would question in calm. They give up rights, money, or trust. Not from belief but from pressure. This is why the method is used so often. It doesn't need force, it uses stress. It doesn't need to prove, it just needs to hurry. The person says yes, not because it's right, but because it feels urgent. Once the moment passes, the system stays in place. The fear fades, but the choice remains. The framing won, even if the facts didn't. Desensitization is the process of dulling emotional response through repeated exposure. When someone sees or hears disturbing content over and over, it begins to feel normal. What once shocked them now barely registers. The images stay the same, but the reaction fades. This method does not force belief. It changes feeling. That change makes it easier to accept what would once be rejected. The process is gradual. At first, a person sees something they find upsetting, violence, cruelty, abuse, or injustice. Their body reacts. The heart rate rises. The stomach turns. The mind says, "This is wrong." But if they see it again, the response is weaker. The next time, it feels familiar. With enough repetition, the person feels nothing at all. They may still say it's wrong, but they no longer react. That gap between knowing and feeling creates space for acceptance. This method often appears in media. A television show might include one violent scene in its first season. Viewers flinch. They talk about how dark it is. By season 3, the show features graphic harm every episode. Viewers don't talk about it. They accept it as part of the story. The same pattern appears in film, music, and games. Each year the content becomes more intense. Each year the audience cares less, not because they agree, but because they're used to it. News follows the same pattern. A single tragedy may shock the public. Images flood the screen. People cry, gather, or demand change. But if the same kind of event happens again and again, the reaction drops. A bombing that once made headlines becomes a short clip. A protest that once drew crowds now goes unnoticed. The public sees the footage. They hear the story, but they move on quickly. The event blends into the background. The outrage fades. Desensitization also affects how people treat others. If a person sees a certain group always shown in pain, violence, or poverty, they begin to associate that group with harm or weakness. Over time, they stop reacting to that group's suffering. They say, "That's just how it is." They stop seeing individuals. They see patterns. The emotion is gone. This process also changes what people find acceptable. A behavior that once seemed extreme may start to seem common. A harsh punishment, once seen as cruel, may now feel fair. A policy that once sparked protests may now pass quietly. The public does not approve. They simply don't care enough to object. This shift can be shaped by timing. If a disturbing message appears next to humor, entertainment, or distraction, it lands more softly. A violent scene in a cartoon may seem less real. A crude joke in a song may sound less harsh. The listener laughs or moves on. The message slides in unnoticed. Over time, they stop hearing the content. They hear only the rhythm. Even childhood media can follow this pattern. A show may include insults or threats as jokes. A video game may reward harm. A toy may show weapons as play. The child sees these patterns early. They learn not to react. They grow up in a world where harm is just part of the scene. The content doesn't make them violent, but it makes them numb. They see others hurt and feel little. They learn to block emotion as a way to keep watching. Online platforms speed this up. A person may scroll past hundreds of posts in a day. Some show jokes, others show pain. One post mocks, the next shocks. The viewer keeps scrolling. The images blend, the emotions blur. The viewer sees more but feels less. They move on before the feeling has time to settle. The next post resets the mind. Over time, even extreme content feels normal. Social media also rewards attention. A post with shocking content may go viral. A creator may push boundaries to stand out. The more intense the content, the more views it gets. Others follow the pattern. The platform fills with bold, loud, and graphic posts. The user sees this as the new normal. They adjust their standards without knowing it. This method also appears in policy. A government may introduce a harsh rule after a crisis. The public reacts. But if the rule stays, the protests fade. Years later, a harsher rule appears. The public barely notices. The line moved slowly. Each step seemed small, but the total change is large. The population now accepts what once would have caused outrage. In workplaces, this shows up as tolerance for mistreatment. An employee may witness one rude comment. They think it's a one-time thing. The next week, they hear more, then jokes, then pressure. Over time, the culture shifts. What was once seen as bullying is now called just the way things are. The staff adjusts. New hires learn to keep quiet. The harm becomes invisible. In law enforcement, this can appear in training. New officers may feel shocked at certain tactics, but repeated drills, harsh talk, and real-world exposure dull the reaction. They learn to treat certain actions as routine. The early discomfort fades. The job becomes mechanical. The person follows orders, not because they agree, but because the feeling is gone. Desensitization is not about belief. It's about feeling. A person may still say something is wrong, but if they feel nothing when they see it, they are less likely to act. That gap creates space for control. The person sees harm and moves on. They hear a cry and stay quiet. They learn to protect themselves by turning off their emotion. This is not weakness. It's human nature. The brain adapts. It reduces pain by building tolerance. But when others know how to use this process, it becomes a tool. They feed content slowly. They increase the pressure. They pair harm with entertainment. They present injustice as routine. The viewer adjusts. The pattern sets in. Breaking the cycle takes effort. A person must slow down. They must ask, why don't I feel anything? They must look again, not to judge, but to reconnect. They must give space for the reaction. They must notice the emotion they were trained to ignore. Only then can they decide for themselves what is normal, what is not, and what they refuse to accept. Controlled education is the shaping of young minds through a limited and standardized curriculum. It is not always about teaching facts or skills. It is often about shaping belief systems, habits and attitudes that match the values of those who design the system. When education is controlled, students learn what to think, not how to think. The goal is not knowledge. The goal is predictability. This process starts early. From the first day of school, students are told where to sit, when to speak, and what to focus on. The structure teaches order and obedience. Questions are welcomed only within a safe range. Topics outside that range are marked as distractions, off-limits, or irrelevant. The system rewards memorization, not curiosity. It favors recall over reflection. The content of the curriculum is not neutral. It reflects choices. Each subject, each lesson, each textbook involves decisions about what to include, what to leave out, and how to present the material. These choices shape how students see history, science, politics, and themselves. If a history class focuses only on national pride and victory, students may never learn about failures, injustice, or opposing views. If a literature class presents only certain authors, cultures, or themes, students may believe those voices are the only ones that matter. In some systems, this control is more visible. A government may approve a narrow list of textbooks. Teachers must follow strict plans. Tests decide the value of a student's knowledge. If a topic is not on the test, it is not worth teaching. This method pushes all students through the same path. It leaves little room for difference or debate. In other systems, the control is softer. Schools may allow choice on the surface, but social pressure keeps students inside the accepted line. A teacher who introduces an unpopular view may face pushback from parents, peers, or supervisors. A student who challenges the curriculum may be seen as disruptive. The result is the same ideas that don't fit are left out. This shaping affects how people think about power, history, and society. If economics is taught from one model only, students may believe it is the only option. If government is always described in ideal terms, students may trust without question. If science is taught without showing the role of funding, politics, or error, students may see it as above bias. These are not lies. They are filters. They show part of the picture and call it whole. Consider a student who learns about the Industrial Revolution. The textbook talks about innovation, jobs, and progress. It may skip over child labor, pollution, or the loss of local economies. The student learns to celebrate growth without asking what it cost. That student may grow up to support systems that repeat the same harm, never seeing the pattern, or take a civics class that teaches voting as the core of democracy. It may skip how media, money, and lobbying shape who gets on the ballot and what issues are discussed. The student learns that the system works because people vote. They never learn how much happens before a vote is cast. Their trust is based on what they were shown and what they were not. Controlled education also shapes behavior. Students learn to follow bells, wait for permission, and divide the day into blocks. This trains them for future roles where time, action, and thought are managed by others. The method is not questioned because it feels normal. It has been there since childhood. In many systems, grades are the main measure of success. A student who repeats what the teacher says gets high marks. A student who asks hard questions may be told to stay on task. This teaches that performance matters more than insight. Over time, students may stop exploring, they may stop asking why. They may focus on pleasing the system instead of learning. The content of education can also change with shifts in power. When new leaders take control, they may rewrite textbooks, revise standards, or ban certain topics. These changes happen quietly, but leave strong marks. A generation grows up with one view, the next grows up with another. Each thinks their version is fact. Few realize how much was edited. Technology adds another layer. Digital tools track progress, flag errors, and shape lessons based on data. These tools can help teachers, but they also narrow the field. If a student's answers trigger a pattern, the system may steer them towards certain content. It may label them as slow, gifted, or at risk. These labels follow the student. They guide how others see them and how they see themselves. Online learning platforms often promote preset lessons. These lessons follow fixed paths. They leave little space for the teacher to adapt. A student who moves too fast or too slow may be left behind. The platform works best when everyone follows the same pace, the same style, and the same outcome. That may work for machines, but not always for minds. Private education can also reflect control. A school may teach a strong ideology, religious, political, or cultural. The curriculum may exclude all content that does not match that view. Students may leave with deep faith in their lessons but no tools to compare, test, or question. Their beliefs feel strong, but they have never been challenged. Even well-meaning schools may shape minds in narrow ways. A program that focuses on social justice may leave out how reform can be used for control. A program that promotes science may ignore how industries steer research. A program that pushes tolerance may avoid topics that cause real tension. The aim is comfort, not complexity. The result is a smooth surface with little depth. Students who go through controlled education often feel confident in what they know. They can pass tests, write essays, and give the right answers. But when faced with new ideas or hard truths, they may freeze. They were trained to repeat, not to explore. They fear being wrong more than they seek what's right. Their education gave them tools to fit in, not to think deeply or act freely. Controlled education does not need to teach hate to limit freedom. It only needs to shape what students see, what they repeat, and what they learn to ignore. It teaches trust in systems, not in thought. It teaches answers, not questions, and it does this early, before students know they could ask for more. Dual messaging is the act of sending two conflicting signals at the same time. One may be verbal, the other may be non-verbal, or both may be spoken, but carry different meanings. The result is confusion. The listener doesn't know which message to trust. Over time, this confusion weakens independent thought and increases compliance. When used often, dual messaging can train people to stop trusting their own judgment. This method works because the brain looks for consistency. When someone hears one thing and sees another, their mind tries to make sense of it. If the mismatch continues, it creates mental tension. That tension is called cognitive dissonance. The person begins to feel unsure, not just about the message, but about their ability to interpret it. This makes them more likely to accept whatever comes next, even if it doesn't make sense. An example is a parent who says, "You can talk to me about anything," but gets angry when a child shares something difficult. The words invite honesty. The reaction punishes it. The child learns that the message is not safe, but they don't know why. The confusion makes them cautious. They stop speaking freely. They try to guess what's safe to say. The trust is gone, but the parent never had to give a direct order. The silence was created through mixed signals. In a public setting, a company might claim, "We value transparency," while hiding key information in legal documents. Their website may feature slogans about openness, but their policies restrict feedback or complaint. The customer feels uneasy. They may sense something is wrong, but can't point to it. The message says one thing, the practice says another. Most people accept it, because they can't resolve the mismatch. They assume the fault lies with them. Governments also use dual messaging. A leader may say, We support free speech, while passing laws that increase censorship. They may speak calmly about unity, while funding programs that divide. The citizen hears one thing, and sees another. Over time, the words lose meaning. People begin to believe that words are only tools, not truths. They stop expecting messages to be honest. This makes them easier to manage. They no longer wait for clarity, they wait for instruction. During a crisis, this method becomes more obvious. Officials may say, there is no reason to panic, while increasing police presence or releasing alarming statistics. The public sees a calm face but feels tension in the air. The conflict creates anxiety. People begin to mirror the behavior around them, rather than trust the message. They line up, stockpile, or stay quiet, not because they believe the message, but because they don't know what else to do. Dual messaging also appears in workplace culture. A manager may say, "We welcome feedback," but then ignore or punish criticism. The team gets the point. Speak only when it's safe. The rule is never spoken, but everyone knows it. Over time, employees stop asking for clarity. They watch body language, tone, and facial expression. They follow cues, not policy. The workplace looks calm, but it's driven by fear and guesswork. Media uses this method too. A news anchor may use friendly tones while describing violent events. A commercial may pair cheerful music with footage of crisis or despair. These mixed messages dull the viewer's sense of concern. The emotion doesn't match the content. The mind can't resolve it. The viewer may stop noticing the contradiction altogether. The message is accepted without being understood. In relationships, this tactic can be used to control. A partner may say, "I love you," while acting distant, cold, or critical. The words create hope. The behavior builds doubt. The result is insecurity. The partner begins to try harder, not because they are loved, but because they want to earn love. They stay in the relationship, chasing consistency. But the inconsistency is the point. It keeps them off balance. Marketing teams often use dual messaging to create desire and doubt at the same time. An ad may say, "Be yourself," while showing a model that fits a narrow standard. The viewer is told they are enough, but shown they are not. They are told to be free, but nudged to buy a product. The conflict drives consumption. The viewer buys not just to own something, but to resolve a feeling that the ad created. In schools, students may be taught that questioning is part of learning, then punished for asking the wrong questions. A lesson may begin with, "Let's explore," then end with, "Here's the correct answer." The student learns to play along. They stop seeking truth. They look for approval. The education becomes about fitting in, not thinking deeply. This method works best when it's slow and steady. A person who hears mixed signals once may notice the conflict, but if they hear them daily, the brain begins to adapt. It stops trying to resolve the contradiction. It accepts confusion as normal. The person becomes numb. They start to rely on tone, habit, or social cues. They follow the stronger message, even if it's not the one they agree with. This tactic can also create learned helplessness. When a person gets constant mixed signals, they stop trying to understand. They feel stuck. Every action might be wrong. Every word might backfire. In that state, they look to others for cues. They wait for permission. They accept rules, even if they don't make sense. The confusion doesn't create rebellion, it creates surrender. Even body language can send a second message. A speaker may say, "I care," while avoiding eye contact and standing with closed posture. The listener hears the words but feels something else. They pick up on the signals, even if they don't name them. This causes doubt. The message becomes unclear, but instead of asking, the listener may withdraw. They don't want to be wrong about what they felt. In advertising, a brand may show images of community while outsourcing labor. They may promote nature while using unsustainable materials. The consumer may sense the gap, but move on. The image is strong, the emotion is clear, the facts are buried. The purchase is made, not from belief, but from habit formed through repeated messaging. When dual messages are repeated across time and systems, they shape how people process information. They teach people that nothing is solid, that every truth has a trick, that every message hides something. The person stops trusting language. They learn to read between lines, but never feel sure. They become passive. They wait. They follow what feels easiest. That's how the method works, not through force, but through steady confusion that wears down the will to question. Anchoring bias happens when a person uses the first piece of information they see or hear as a reference point for making decisions. That first point, called the anchor, shapes how they view everything that follows. It does not matter if the anchor is random, wrong, or irrelevant. The mind still uses it as a base. This mental shortcut affects choices, judgments, and opinions without people realizing it. A simple example of anchoring appears in pricing. A store shows a jacket marked at $300, then puts a sign next to it that says, "Now only $150. The shopper sees the second price and thinks they're getting a deal. The original price becomes the anchor. Without it, $150 might seem high. With it, $150 feels like a bargain. The shopper doesn't check the actual value of the jacket. They just react to the difference between the anchor and the current price. This also works in salary negotiations. A hiring manager may ask what the applicant made at their last job. That number becomes the anchor. If the applicant says $50,000, the offer may come in slightly higher. If they say $70,000, the offer may rise, even if the job role is the same. The first number sets the range. From there, all future numbers seem reasonable or extreme in relation to it. Anchoring bias affects more than money. It shapes how people judge facts. If someone hears a statistic, say that 40% of people believe a certain claim, they may view that belief as common. Even if the number is false or taken out of context, it anchors their sense of public opinion. Later, if someone says the real number is only 12%, the mind resists. The original number still feels closer to the truth, even when corrected. In courtrooms, anchoring plays a role in sentencing. Studies have shown that when prosecutors suggest a high penalty, juries often lean closer to that figure, even when they don't intend to. If a prosecutor says, the crime deserves 20 years, and the jury wants to be fair, they may lower it to 15. But if the anchor had been 10 years, they might have settled on 8. The first number influences the final decision, even if it's just a starting point. News reporting can use anchoring bias to shift how people feel about an issue. A report might start by stating the cost of a government project at $100 billion. That figure stays in the viewer's mind. When the report later says that spending was cut to $80 billion, the viewer sees that as savings. But if the project should have cost $40 billion to begin with, the cut is not a real improvement. The anchor changed the frame. It made a bad deal seem better than it is. This method is used in politics. A campaign might say that a rival wants to raise taxes by 20%, even if the real number is 5%. That 20% becomes the anchor. Voters start with that in mind. When they hear the actual number, it feels small, but only compared to the false anchor. Their opinion shifts, not based on facts but on contrast. The trick works because the brain doesn't forget the first figure it saw. In social settings, anchoring can shape how people see each other. If a person is introduced as the smartest in the room, that label sticks. Later, if they say something vague or unclear, others give them the benefit of the doubt. The anchor makes people adjust their view to fit the title. On the flip side, if someone is introduced as a troublemaker, others may interpret neutral behavior as suspicious. The anchor sets the tone. Anchoring bias is used in education as well. If a student scores 90 on their first test, and then scores 80 on the second, teachers may see the drop as a warning sign. But if another student scores 60 first, and then 80, the second score seems like progress. Both students got the same 80. The difference is the anchor. It changes how the same outcome is judged. This effect can show up in everyday conversation. If someone says, most people spend about 2 hours a day on social media, that number becomes a reference. A person who spends 4 hours may feel they use it too much. A person who spends 1 hour may feel proud. But the number may not be based on real data. It may just be a guess. Still, it shapes how people judge their own behavior. Anchoring can be subtle. In advertising, a product may be listed next to a more expensive item to make it seem affordable. A $70 bottle of wine may seem overpriced alone, but looks like a better choice when placed beside a $120 bottle. The high price creates an anchor. The mid-range product now seems like a smart middle ground. In emergencies, anchoring affects how people react to risk. If the first message says a situation is under control, people stay calm. If the first message says, this could become a disaster, people remain tense. Even if later messages say the risk has dropped, the original tone becomes the base.
5.
Every new piece of information is judged in relation to it. Anchoring also shapes how people view change. If a company says a new plan will cost 1,000 jobs, then changes it to 600, the public may see that as an improvement. But if the company had started by saying 600, the reaction would be more severe. The drop from 1,000 to 600 looks like a win, but the result, 600 people losing jobs, remains the same. The danger of anchoring bias is that it feels like common sense. The first number or idea comes across as neutral. It doesn't feel like it's shaping the rest, but once it's there, it frames everything that follows. Even experts are affected. In studies, judges, doctors, and economists have all shown anchoring effects in their work. Knowing the bias exists doesn't fully prevent it. This method is especially strong when decisions are made quickly. Under stress, the brain reaches for shortcuts. It grabs the first number or fact it sees and uses that as a guide. This can lead to mistakes. It can also make people more open to manipulation. A clever speaker or seller knows that the anchor doesn't have to be true, it only has to be first. Anchoring bias is not about force, it's about framing. The person still believes they chose freely. They don't feel pushed, but their decision was shaped long before they made it. The first word, number, or label acted like a hook. It stayed in place, pulling every later thought toward itself. The person thinks they weighed the facts, but they weighed them on a scale already tilted. Reality inversion is the act of turning truth upside down. It makes lies sound like facts and paints truth as dangerous. The goal is not just to spread false information, it is to destroy the idea that anything can be trusted. When reality is inverted, the ground under a person's thinking begins to shift. They lose the tools they need to decide what is real and what is false. This method starts by repeating false claims with confidence. A speaker says something untrue, but says it often and without doubt. They may use serious tone, polished language, or official symbols. If questioned, they double down. They act shocked that anyone would disagree. Over time, this performance creates a sense that the lie must be true. Otherwise, why would someone defend it so boldly? At the same time, real facts are dismissed or mocked. If someone shares a valid concern, they are called paranoid or extreme. If a report offers proof, it is labeled biased or fake. The truth is not refuted with better facts. It is attacked through tone, repetition, and ridicule. The focus is on shaping how people feel, not what they know. A simple example appears in advertising. A product may be sold with the phrase clinically proven, even if the study behind it was weak or funded by the seller. If someone questions the claim, they are told they don't understand science. The lie is covered in the language of truth. The truth is pushed aside as ignorance or negativity. In politics, reality inversion is used to hide failure. A policy may increase harm, but leaders say it is a success. They point to numbers that look good, but miss the full picture. Critics who raise concerns are accused of being anti-progress or anti-safety. Their facts are ignored. Their motives are questioned. The story is flipped, the failure becomes a win, and the truth becomes the threat. This tactic grows stronger in polarized systems. If a group already trusts one source, that source can invert reality with little resistance. A news outlet may say, "What you heard elsewhere is a lie. Here's what really happened." They offer a version of events that fits the viewer's feelings, not the facts. The viewer accepts it because it feels familiar or comforting. They stop asking questions. Over time, this creates two realities. In one, a person believes what can be tested and proven. In the other, a person believes what has been repeated and framed as true. These two people may see the same event and draw opposite conclusions. Each sees the other as blind, brainwashed, or dishonest. The gap is not just about facts. It is about the ground each person stands on. In education, reality inversion may show up in curriculum choices. A textbook may leave out key facts or present events with slanted language. Students learn a version of history that fits a certain story. If someone brings in a missing piece, they are told to stay on topic. The truth does not match the script, so it is pushed aside. Over time, the edited version becomes the only version people remember. In media, headlines can flip meaning through small changes. A peaceful protest is called a riot. A harmful policy is called bold reform. A whistleblower is framed as a threat. These shifts happen in tone, not in detail. The facts may still be there, but they are buried under words that twist their meaning. The viewer walks away with a feeling, not a clear picture. Even visuals can be used to invert reality. A photo taken out of context can tell the opposite story. A video clip can be trimmed to hide what happened before or after. The image looks real, but the message it carries is false. Once shared, it shapes public opinion. Later corrections may be ignored or doubted. The lie came first. It stuck. This method is effective because people want to believe they are right. When the lie fits what they already think or feel, they accept it more easily. Reality inversion plays on this bias. It offers false certainty in place of uncomfortable truth. It tells people they are smart for ignoring critics. It gives them a sense of strength and clarity. But that clarity is built on sand. In some systems, reality inversion is used to maintain power. A leader may say, "We have never been freer," while limiting speech, movement, or choice. If someone points out the gap, they are called an enemy of the state. The public hears the message so often that they begin to repeat it. They say, "Things aren't perfect, but at least we're safe." They stop looking at what they've lost. In conversation, a person who questions an accepted story may hear, "You've been reading too much into things," or "That's just a conspiracy." These words don't prove anything. They shut down the thought. The listener may doubt themselves, not because they were wrong, but because their doubt was framed as dangerous. Online, algorithms feed this system. A person who believes a false story sees more content that supports it. They get likes and shares from people who agree. This makes them more confident. When they see the truth, it feels out of place. It feels threatening. They reject it, not from reason, but from reflex. The truth has been turned into a foreign object. Reality inversion also uses fake complexity. A speaker may say, "This issue is too deep for most people to understand," or "Only experts can see the full picture." This builds a wall around false claims. It keeps others out. It makes people feel that truth is too hard to grasp. So they choose the simpler message, even if it's wrong. In the long run, this method breaks down trust in shared knowledge. People no longer agree on what happened, what matters, or what is real. They live in silos. They follow different rules. They no longer debate facts. They debate the idea of facts. At that point, anything can be claimed, denied, or reversed without consequence. The truth becomes optional. When someone finally says something true, the system treats them as the liar. Their voice is removed, flagged, or ignored. The public, trained to fear the real, turns away. They say, "That can't be true," or "Someone would have told us." But no one did, because the people who tried were already pushed out. Reality inversion does not ask people to believe a new truth. It asks them to doubt their old tools. Once that doubt is planted, the ground shifts. People stop testing. They stop verifying. They rely on tone, loyalty, and repetition. That's enough to hold the lie in place, and enough to make the truth disappear. Language framing is the use of specific words to shape how people understand an idea. By changing the words, the speaker changes the meaning. without changing the facts. This method influences how people feel about an event, person, or policy. It does not need to lie, it only needs to adjust the frame. The same action can be seen as moral or cruel, safe or risky, good or bad, based on how it is described. This method works because people respond to language emotionally, as well as logically. A word can soften or harden a message. It can hide blame or shift focus. It can guide a listener toward one conclusion, while making another seem unreasonable. When done well, the frame becomes invisible. The listener accepts the message without knowing they were guided. One of the clearest examples appears in war reporting. When civilians die in an airstrike, officials may use the phrase collateral damage. This phrase sounds technical. It removes people from the story. It treats the deaths as side effects. The listener feels less emotion. If the same event were described as the killing of non-combatants, the reaction would change. That phrase brings attention to the people. It invites moral judgment. It sounds wrong. The fact is the same, but the language changes the frame. In politics, this method shapes how laws are viewed. A tax on the wealthy may be called a wealth redistribution plan or a class warfare policy. One frame suggests fairness, the other suggests conflict. A cut to social programs may be called fiscal responsibility or abandoning the vulnerable. Again, the words guide emotion. The public may support or oppose the policy based on how it is named, not what it does. In business, layoffs are often called restructuring or downsizing. These terms sound neutral, even strategic. They hide the human cost. They frame the action as a smart adjustment, not a painful cut. A worker who loses a job may be told they are being let go, not fired. The phrase softens the blow. It creates distance from the cause. The language offers cover. Marketing uses framing in nearly every message. A food label may say 90% fat-free instead of 10% fat. The numbers are the same, but the frame feels better. A car may be described as pre-owned instead of used. That small change shifts the tone from worn out to well kept. A price may be just $9.99 instead of $10. That 1 cent keeps the price in the single digits. The buyer responds not to logic, but to feeling. Framing appears in public health as well. A disease prevention policy may be called community protection or government overreach. The first phrase suggests care. The second suggests control. A vaccine may be described as life-saving or experimental. One word builds trust. The other builds doubt. People make decisions not only on data, but on how the data is framed. In news, language framing decides which details stand out. A protest may be called peaceful, fiery, or violent. Each term leads the reader in a different direction. A person who broke a law may be called a dissident, criminal, or whistleblower. The term chosen shapes whether they are seen as brave or dangerous. Even weather can be framed. A heat wave may become a climate crisis or seasonal fluctuation, depending on the outlet. The facts remain, but the meaning shifts. In legal settings, this method has real power. A suspect may be described as a person of interest or an alleged perpetrator. One sounds neutral, the other sounds guilty. A lawyer may call an action negligent or accidental. The word used can shape the verdict. The framing influences both jury and public, even when evidence is the same. In everyday conversation, people use framing without thinking. A person who wants to avoid blame may say, "Mistakes were made" instead of "I made a mistake." This passive frame removes the subject. It makes the event sound like it happened on its own. A manager may say, "We're exploring all options," instead of "We don't know what to do." The first frame suggests control. The second suggests confusion. Both may be true, but the first hides weakness. In education, framing shapes how history is taught. A textbook may describe settlers as pioneers or invaders. One term highlights bravery, the other highlights harm. A war may be described as a conflict, intervention, or liberation. The label leads the student toward one view. Even silence is a form of framing. Leaving out certain events or voices shapes understanding just as much as the words that are used. Framing also affects how groups are seen. A policy that targets one group may be called reform or protection, depending on who is speaking. A person may be labeled patriot or extremist for the same act. These words carry emotional weight. They build or destroy public support. They do not describe, they shape. Once a frame is set, it becomes hard to break. If a person hears a policy called tough on crime, they may support it without asking what it does. If they hear it called mass incarceration, they may oppose it without reading the law. The frame becomes the lens. Everything seen through it takes on its color. Framing works best when it goes unnoticed. If the listener does not question the language, the meaning goes in smoothly. The mind accepts it as natural. The emotion follows. This is why powerful groups invest so much in messaging. They do not need to change the facts. They only need to change the words. Over time, framing can shift public norms. A practice once seen as harmful may be rebranded as helpful. A policy once rejected may gain support with a new name. The change does not come through reasoned debate. It comes through repetition. The new terms replace the old. The new meanings feel right. The original questions fade. This does not mean every frame is false, but every frame is a choice. It leaves things in and leaves things out. It adds tone. It shapes feeling. It is a tool. When used to inform, it can help. When used to manipulate, it can deceive. The listener must learn to ask what words are being used and why, what is being shown, and what is being hidden. Only then can they begin to see past the frame and into the thing itself. Artificial hero creation is the process of building public figures who appear larger than life. These figures may be celebrities, experts, or leaders. They are shaped to gain trust, loyalty, and obedience. People are encouraged to see them not as human beings, but as symbols. The symbol is praised, protected, and followed. Doubt is discouraged. Criticism is framed as betrayal. Over time, the figure becomes a tool, not to guide truth, but to steer belief. This method works because people look for leaders. In times of confusion, fear, or change, they want someone who seems certain. If a person appears strong, wise, or inspiring, others will follow. But not all heroes rise on their own. Some are chosen, packaged, and promoted. Their image is crafted. Their flaws are hidden. Their voice becomes the voice of the system that built them. In media, this happens often. A public figure appears on multiple channels. They speak on every topic. They are called brave, brilliant, or visionary. Their past is edited. Their record is simplified. They become known not for one skill, but for being right about everything. The public begins to ask for their opinion before forming their own. The hero speaks. The crowd agrees. Consider a scientist who is always on screen. At first, they explain their field. Then they appear in ads, talk shows, and news panels. They speak beyond their training. They give advice on politics, ethics, and economy. The audience forgets their limits. The title scientist becomes a stamp of truth. Viewers begin to accept their words as fact, even when the topic is outside their area. The same happens with celebrities. An actor may play a noble role in film. Off-screen, they speak about justice or truth. The line between role and reality fades. Fans trust the person based on the character they played. A singer may gain millions of followers. Brands and causes attach to their image. Their words are repeated, not because they are tested, but because of who said them. This creation is not always driven by the person. Often teams work behind them. Agents, writers, consultants, and sponsors. They plan interviews, stage photos, and manage mistakes. The public sees one face. Behind it, many hands shape what that face says and does. The hero becomes a product. The message is tailored to please, to sell, or to steer. In politics, artificial heroes are built for power. A candidate may be framed as a savior. Their flaws are ignored. Their record is rebranded. Every speech ends with music and lights. Their followers use their name as a shield. Critics are called traitors, enemies, or fools. The leader becomes the movement. The truth becomes what they say. This method depends on control of image. Any sign of weakness is hidden. If a mistake happens, it is denied, spun, or blamed on others. The hero must appear perfect. If a rival rises, they are attacked. The public is told to pick sides. Loyalty becomes proof of truth. Doubt becomes proof of disloyalty. Social media makes this easier. A hero can gain millions of followers fast. Algorithms push their posts. Their face appears in every feed. Likes, shares, and comments build a sense of approval. The numbers become proof. The more support they get, the more people join in. Over time, people follow because others follow. The crowd builds the echo. In times of crisis, this method becomes powerful. A disaster strikes. The public feels fear. A figure steps forward. They speak clearly. They offer hope. They become the face of the moment. News channels replay their words. Memes appear. Books are written. The figure is now a symbol of safety. The system uses their face to pass rules, sell products, or guide opinion. The hero does not just lead, they shield others from blame. This tactic can also redirect anger. When the public feels betrayed, a hero can be offered as a fix. They say the right things. They take bold steps. People shift their focus from systems to individuals. They stop asking about structure and start cheering for style. The hero becomes a barrier between the people and the truth. Artificial heroes are also used to end debate. A group may say, "This person supports us, so the issue is settled." The person may be an expert, a survivor, or a public icon. Their presence ends the argument. Others feel pressure to agree. The hero's word replaces discussion. This silences new voices and freezes thought. Over time, the hero may believe the image. They begin to speak with more certainty. They reject correction. They accept praise without question. They stop listening. Their circle shrinks to those who agree. Their message becomes sharper but less honest. They speak in slogans. They defend their legacy, not the truth. This method is old. Kings claimed divine right. Priests claimed sacred knowledge. Generals claimed destiny. Today the titles have changed, but the pattern remains. The figure is framed as unique, chosen, or necessary. Without them, the people are told, chaos will come. With them, all will be well. But no person is beyond question. Every figure has limits. Every message needs testing. When a voice cannot be challenged, it is no longer honest. When a leader is above reproach, they are no longer part of the people. They are above them. Artificial hero creation is not about guidance. It is about control. It uses admiration to block doubt. It turns the human into a brand, the voice into a rule, the person into a wall. It asks not for thought, but for trust, not for reason, but for belief. And once belief is given, it becomes hard to take back, even when the truth returns, even when the hero falls. Behavioral nudging is a way to guide people's choices without telling them what to do. It uses subtle design features, like placement, defaults, or phrasing, to push people toward a certain action. It doesn't force or punish. It doesn't even always explain, but it changes behavior by making one option easier, more visible, or more natural than the rest. The person still chooses, but the choice was shaped before they made it. This method works because people often make decisions quickly. They don't weigh every option or check every detail. They go with what feels simple, familiar, or immediate. Behavioral nudging uses that habit. It adjusts the setup around a decision so that the path someone takes feels like their own, but it's been guided from the start. One common example is the use of default settings. When a person signs up for a new app, the privacy options may be set to share by default. The user can change them, but most don't. They assume the default is fine, or they don't notice it. The system doesn't tell them what to do. It simply makes one option the starting point. That's enough to shape what happens next. Organ donors offer another example. In some countries, people are automatically listed as donors, unless they opt out. In others, they must opt in. The difference is only in the form, but the impact is huge. Where donor status is the default, participation is much higher. People stick with the first option they see. They treat it as normal. That simple frame becomes the nudge. Online shopping uses nudges in the way items are displayed. A website may show certain products at the top of a page. These are often marked as most popular or recommended. The user sees them first. They may not scroll past. They assume these items are best. They click and buy, no one told them to. The site just made the choice feel obvious. In food placement, stores and cafeterias use location to guide choice. Healthier options may be placed at eye level. Sugary snacks may be put near the exit. People reach for what they see first. They eat what's within reach. They choose what stands out. The food doesn't change. The layout does. That's the nudge. Government forms use nudging too. A tax form may present the option to donate a small amount to a cause. If the box is already checked, most people leave it that way. If it's blank, most skip it. The setup makes one action feel easier. That's often enough to tip the scale. In public spaces, signs that say 90% of people wash their hands after using this bathroom increase hand washing. The sign doesn't command, it just states a fact, or the appearance of one. People want to match what others do. They follow the behavior that seems normal. The wording creates the norm. The result is better hygiene. This method is not limited to health or shopping. It shapes how people vote, save, or respond to crises. A retirement plan may be set to automatic enrollment. A person must act to stop it. Most don't. They accept the default. They begin saving without planning to. The system worked because the effort to say no was greater than the effort to say yes. In politics, ballot design can act as a nudge. The order of candidates can sway undecided voters. The top slot gets more attention. Some people vote for the first name they see. The layout shapes the outcome, not through fraud, but through psychology. The voter makes a real choice. But the system made one choice easier to make. Websites use nudging with pop-ups and timing. A page may show a discount that disappears in 5 minutes. A timer counts down. The user feels pressure to act. They may buy something they weren't sure about. The system didn't force the sale. It shaped the moment. That's the nudge. Language matters too. A medical form that asks, "Would you like to protect your family by getting vaccinated?" The frames the shot as a caring act. The same shot, if framed as "Do you want to take this experimental drug?" triggers doubt. The treatment is the same. The framing shifts how it feels. The nudge comes from the words. Apps use red dots or badges to show new messages. Even if the message isn't urgent, the red dot draws the eye. The user taps to clear it. They check the message, click a link, or watch a video. The nudge came from color and habit, not from content. The system turned attention into action without a command. Nudging is also used in security. A password system may suggest strong passwords. The field may turn green when the password is long and varied. The user wants the green light. They adjust their choice. The system guided them towards safety using color and feedback. That's a nudge. In social media, the like button itself is a nudge. It offers a fast way to agree. People use it to show approval without thought. Over time, they shape their posts to get more likes. They say what gets response. The platform didn't order this shift. It nudged it with design. Even silence can be a nudge. A form that leaves out an option may steer the user. If a survey on policy lists only 2 sides, people choose one, even if they don't fully agree. The missing third view becomes invisible. The system didn't forbid it. It just left it out. That's enough to guide opinion. Behavioral nudging works because it feels natural. It doesn't fight the user. It follows their habits. It speaks to fast thinking, not deep reflection. The person still believes they chose freely, but the shape of the choice was built ahead of time. This method can serve good purposes. It can boost savings, improve health, or reduce harm. But it can also be used to sell, distract, or mislead. It is quiet. It is soft. But it is powerful. It doesn't remove choice. It shapes the path to make some choices more likely than others. Most people do not notice nudges. That's part of their design. They work best when invisible. The user sees the outcome but not the influence. The system got what it wanted. The user thinks it was their idea. That's how the method works. Subtle, simple, and silent, but effective. Divide and conquer is a method used to keep people from working together. It breaks large groups into smaller ones, then turns those groups against each other. The goal is to stop unity. If people are busy fighting each other, they won't challenge those in control. They stay distracted. They use energy on side battles. The real problem, the structure above them, remains untouched. This method works by making identity feel more important than common ground. It takes something like race, class, religion, gender, or political belief, and pushes it to the front. It turns identity into a label, then turns labels into sides. Each side begins to see the other as a threat. Each side wants to win. No one stops to ask who wrote the rules. A workplace shows this clearly. The staff may be underpaid and overworked. Instead of joining together to ask for change, workers argue over shifts, age, or experience. Some say the new hires get treated better. Others say the old staff gets all the respect. Management doesn't need to say much. They let the workers fight among themselves. The divide keeps them from looking up. Media plays a role in this. News stories often frame issues as battles between groups. One channel says urban voters are the problem. Another blames rural voters. One side is shown as strong, the other as ignorant. Each side feels attacked. Each side gets defensive. Viewers stay loyal to their source. They stop talking across lines. They repeat slogans and insults. The deeper issues like money, power, and law get less attention. Social media amplifies the divide. A post that attacks the other side spreads faster than one that seeks understanding. Platforms reward strong emotion. Anger and fear get clicks. People post in ways that please their group. They filter their feed. Over time, their world shrinks. Everyone they follow agrees with them. Everyone who disagrees looks like an enemy. The platform profits. The public fragments. In politics, leaders often use this method. They speak to a base. They name a threat. That threat may be a group, a belief, or a trend. They say, we must protect ourselves from them. This creates fear. The fear creates loyalty. The public rallies, not around policy, but around identity. The politician gains support without offering solutions. They only need to feed the fight. Laws can reflect the same tactic. A rule may target a group quietly. It may limit where they live, how they vote, or what help they get. Other groups are told, this is not about you. The groups stay separate. One suffers. The others stay silent. By the time they realize the pattern, the law is in place. The damage is done. Divide and conquer shows up in schools. Students are sorted by test scores, neighborhoods, or behavior. Some get labeled gifted. Others are called trouble. These labels stick. The students stop seeing each other as equals. The system does not have to teach inequality. It only needs to reward some and punish others. The students do the rest. They fight for place, not justice. In social causes, the same pattern can weaken progress. A movement may start strong, but soon it splits over language, leadership, or tactics. Each group says, we're the real voice. They argue over purity. They forget the goal. The movement stalls. The system watches. It does not have to defeat the movement. It only has to wait for it to divide itself. Even families feel the effect. Generations argue over values. Siblings compete for approval. Parents are pulled between needs. The fight grows inside the home. The pressure builds. Few step back to ask where the tension came from. Often, it began outside, through stress, debt, or fear. But inside the fight, that truth gets lost. Religion has been used in this way for centuries. Groups with shared roots are taught to see each other as rivals. They argue over practice, history, or power. They stop seeing the overlap. They defend difference. Wars start. Peace ends. The message is forgotten. The fight takes its place. The workplace uses language to deepen the divide. Terms like professionalism may mean speak a certain way. Team player may mean don't complain. Workers learn to code switch, mask or silence themselves to fit. Those who can't are left out. The divide grows inside the team. The company saves face while the people lose connection. Even science and health can become tools for division. One group is told they trust science. Another is told they question it. Each sees the other as dangerous. Each sees their own side as clear-eyed. Meanwhile, funding, patents, and access shape what science says and who hears it. The deeper questions about who decides and who benefits go unasked. But the method thrives on simple frames. Us versus them, right versus wrong, safe versus threat. The more complex the world becomes, the more tempting these frames are. They offer order, they reduce doubt, but they also shut down thought. They push people to defend a side instead of test an idea. This method can run quietly. It doesn't need violence. It needs only habit. A hiring policy that favors one school over others. A news feed that skips certain voices. A social rule that says, don't talk about that here. The lines form, people stay in place. The system moves forward. At the center of divide and conquer is fear. Fear of change. Fear of the other. Fear of losing place. This fear is not always false, but it is often shaped. It is grown on purpose. A false story here, a harsh law there. The public reacts. They push away those who look different, think different, or speak out. They build walls in their mind. The system watches. Once the fear is in place, people begin to self-police. They don't just avoid unity, they attack it. A person who says, let's look at the root cause, is called naive. A person who refuses to choose sides is called weak. A person who sees both sides is called disloyal. The system no longer needs to divide. The people do it themselves. Divide and conquer is not about who is right. It is about who benefits from the fight. It takes the energy that could go toward change and turns it inward. It builds teams but blocks truth. It rewards noise and silences depth. It keeps the real center of power out of reach. While everyone argues on the edges, the lines hold. The structure stands. The people stay distracted.